debate politics driven by science. I think it is a good opportunity for us to put science in the political agenda. So today we will have these two round tables regarding hydrological modeling. And we are happy to announce the first round table about that will be moderated by Professor Bruno, and will be debated by Professor Renata Moreira. Both are engineer and planning, urban planning. So we have these two approaches to driven this interesting section. And please, Bruno, it's up to you to call the participants and read the bios and conduct the time.
Bom dia a todos. Primeiramente, peço desculpa por fazer a apresentação aqui em português, tá? Então, vamos dar abertura aqui ao painel, o primeiro painel do dia de hoje, está referenciado aí a modelagem hidrológica. O nosso tema aqui é a modelagem hidrológica e desenvolvimento de soluções abrangentes de projeto para melhorar a resiliência de bacias hidrográficas urbanas e inundações pluviais. Tá? Primeiramente, vou fazer a apresentação aqui dos componentes da mesa, né? Começando aqui pelo Balaji Narasimhan, do Instituto Tecnológico da Índia, hidrólogo, né, com 15 anos aí de experiência na área de modelagem hidrológica, trabalha aí com o desenvolvimento de projetos, né, de desenvolvimento sustentável, e trabalha aí com aclimar esses projetos da variabilidade de impactos, e coordenador aí da Ganges River Basin Management. O outro palestrante que vai compor a mesa é o Felipe Falseta, do IPT, aqui de São Paulo. Ele é engenheiro civil, formado na Unicamp, mestrado em engenharia civil na área de hidráulica na USP e doutorado, né, em engenharia hidráulica pela USP, né? E trabalha aí na área de drenagem urbana e pesquisador aí no IPT, na área aí também de drenagem, tá? O terceiro participante que vai compor a mesa é o Murphy Lamudi, do Instituto Indiano também, né, professor, né, e membro aí do Burkett Group, e associado do convênio aí Indo-German e do Centro de Sustentabilidade desde 2011. Tem trabalhado aí no Instituto Indiano de Tecnologia e no grupo de Hidráulica e Engenharia desde 1989, né, uma larga experiência aí. Então, convido aí os palestrantes aí para compor a mesa, tá? Chamar primeiramente aí o Balaji a compor a mesa, por favor, seja muito bem-vindo.
Good morning, everyone. You can hear? Yeah. My name is Murthy Bhalamudi, and I'm here along with my colleague Balaji Narasimhan. So this presentation is together by us, and I'll start first. Take maximum of 15 minutes, and then I'll hand over to Balaji. And you, I hope somebody is keeping time, and then just let me know when I need to stop. Okay. We are, our students, Sritu, Arun, Ilancherian, and Krushil Modi have helped us in our work in the last 5 years. Okay, already the stage was set up yesterday by the speakers, particularly Professor Rohilla, and then we also had our German counterparts telling about this thing is about modeling, the importance of modeling, and then we are starting off from there. And we do have the problem in India about excess of the water during the floods, and then we also have following within 1 year or 2 years, we have severe problem of deficit. Like 2015, Chennai had the 1 in 100 year floods, and we were shut down for almost 10 days, including our airport, and that was the 6th largest disaster in the entire world in that year. And then 2019, we declared zero water day. That means none of the surface water reservoirs in Chennai had even a drop of water. We had to transport water from a very far distance through rail tankers. So that was the situation. And then, if you look at what is the water availability annual in Chennai catchment is about total volume of rain 6,700 million meter cube, surface water potential. I have all this data. But the whole problem is whatever the surface water that is available is not sufficient to meet the demand. So what we do is we bring the water from very far away places. That's what Professor Suresh has said. More and more the length of the pipeline is increasing. So can you imagine, we are 8 million people in Chennai, and then to meet our water demand, we get water through a canal which is 406 kilometers long from the north. And we also have another pipeline which is 235 kilometers down south, and then we carry about 425 million meter cube and 65.7 million meter cube of water that is coming and transported over a long distance. And many times this water is not sufficient. And so we go in for a very costly alternatives of what we call desalination. So we have 2000, and we have floods. And yesterday again, they were talking about different types of floods. Chennai gets all those types. We get pluvial flood, we get fluvial flood. We are also on the coast, so we get stormwater surges. So we have inundation from the stormwater surges. On top of that, we also have many times in many locations, bad drainage system. So just the drainage system doesn't work, and then we have the floods. So 2015, all water bodies were full. Soil was fully saturated. Both riverine flooding and local flooding occurred. And 2021, as I said, 2015 we had a flood, 2019 we had the severest drought, and then 2021 again we had the floods. Here water bodies were only partially full during the beginning of the event, soil was only partially saturated, and they're not due to riverine flooding but mostly waterlogging. So now given this, we need to solve the problem of excess water, and we need to solve the problem of deficit water in the same place. They are occurring in serial. And the context is historical context. People knew about these problems. They were actually designed. So what they did is they used to have a system of tanks which take water from the river when the water is available, and then the cascading of these tanks. And they have been existing for more than almost 2,000 years. They had designed this. And in fact, if you look at the city of Coimbatore, again, we had 8 tanks, and then now when people are talking about solving the problem of water problem in Coimbatore city, then they keep talking about restoration. So when we talk about water resources management, we have to think about piped water supply, we have to think about water body rejuvenation, and of course we also have to talk about water quality in this water body rejuvenation. So water bodies, in fact, Balaji is working on a project along with Delft University. It's called 1000 Lakes Project. We have lots of these water bodies, but over the years, we have lost all of them to the development, unsustainable development. All the lake beds have been occupied and then the high-rise buildings have come. Because of that, we have lost the detention storage capacity for taking the floods. So one of the ideas in solving the problem is how do we restore these water bodies so that they're like, act like many distributed detention storages and solve the problem of the floods. And like to give you an example, this is right next to our university. It's an area called Velachery. This is the lake that we had at one time, about 30 years ago. And now all that is done only here. So not only we lost the storage capacity, but because of all this development, we lost the interconnectivity of these lakes because they're all cascading lakes. And then the interconnectivity is also lost. So even if somebody is restoring this lake, they also have to restore those interconnects. What is the inlet channel? What is the outlet channel? Where is it going? They have to do all that. Many times that is overlooked. So in fact, we had done some work thinking if we go and then don't retain, don't lose these tanks in future, what happens? We realized that if you don't protect these lakes in the upper catchment area, what used to be a 50-year rainfall would cause a 100-year flood now, what we call. This is what we done recently through what we call our modeling studies. So emphasis right now is on rejuvenation of water bodies. And then recently the Chennai city has declared that you create sumps on all open space reservation lands to conserve water and control floods. That is all the parks and all the public spaces, they want to create these sumps and then probably store the water. And then we also are big into recycling of treated wastewater for non-potable, not only non-potable, for indirect potable use. IIT Madras has the distinction of treating 100% of all its used water. We treat it to tertiary treated level, which is basically H2O, and then we use it for non-potable purpose. And excess water, we had a lake, we deepened the lake, and then we store this excess treated water into that lake, and then we use it later on for treat it like any water body, and then do water treatment. We have been running it for more than 8 years now. And then looking at our example, Chennai city we had a 4 MLD plant, and Chennai city had replicated it for 10 MLD. It has been running for 4 years, and then now they are putting another 10 MLD, and then my understanding is the potential for 100 MLD is being explored through a World Bank funding. So now with this, what we need to understand is when we talk about the nature-based solutions, talk about water management, we need to understand that the planning and execution and the operation should be an integrated planning. Like, for example, when I'm designing a water supply system, I should not forget about the sewerage system, and I should not forget about rainwater management system. You put all these three together, and then we have to plan for it, and then we have to do this. We had done some exercises and then say that if you do only water distribution network separately and sewerage separately and no groundwater recycling, our cost was coming, for a small example, cost was coming to 154 million rupees, whereas if you do with greywater recycling, you cut down the cost to 100 million, and then if you actually do planning and design and then together, you can still cut down to 96 million. So with this, this is one picture I would like to show. This is the Chennai city. Suresh, whatever you have done in 94 regarding abandoned quarries, we are doing that now in Chennai city. In fact, in 2019, when we had this problem, they wanted to explore these abandoned quarries and then use the abandoned quarries as detention ponds. And then they also restoring lot of water bodies, rejuvenation of water bodies. But the rejuvenation of water bodies, they want to use it as detention ponds for stormwater management. That's what my colleague Balaji Narasimhan wants to do, because he wants to solve the flood problem. Another colleague of mine, Professor Liji Philip, wants to use the same water bodies, rejuvenated water bodies, as storage structures for storing treated wastewater. So when we do this, then it actually, and then we also have another colleague who wants to do manage aquifer recharge. That is, that you have excess water during the floods, you want to push it into the ground. But then Chennai, we have a problem of very shallow water, because within 10 meters we get the hard rock, and then we will not be able to. The geology has to help when you want to do managed aquifer recharge. The moral of the story is when you want to do this problem, you cannot, already people have told yesterday, right? You cannot look at them in compartmentalized. You have to look at your water supply system, sewerage system, that is domestic wastewater, and the stormwater management system together, along with, don't forget that like these water bodies also have ecological functions they perform. So all the four have to be thought about right in the beginning, and then you have to plan and then design it. And if it is a retrofitting exercise like for an existing city like Chennai, it becomes very, very difficult. And that is where we need to go and then do modeling. And I would say that this modeling has to be done in 2 stages. That is at a macro level water balance studies, that is how much of water I would supply through what you call treated wastewater, how much of water I would supply through my rainwater management, how much of water I would supply through pipe supply from a particular source, how much of water I would go and then import it from somewhere else. So we have to do a what you call a macro level studies, and then there are models which are available. I would like to inform that, like, in fact, I just reviewed one excellent thesis from University of Kaiserslautern, Timo Christopher Dilly. He has done a holistic decision-making tool for planning water supply, urban drainage, wastewater treatment, and water reuse, everything using a mixed linear programming. It is possible to develop such models to macro-level water balance models. And then we go and then do our focus on research is to develop a methodology for site selection. When we talk about LID implementation, we need to use models for site selection of the implementation of LIDs, to develop hydrological framework for incorporation of green infrastructure, and we also, at what location, what kind of LID you want to put, the site selection, type of LID that you, is suitable for that, and of course the size of the LID. For this, you need models, and then that's what we have done. First thing is we want to take it up, whatever the existing models like SWMM and then SWAT, which are the most commonly used models. And then in that, how these LID components are actually incorporated in SWAT and SWMM, we looked at and then said, we start there and then improve upon our modeling capabilities in these models by rewriting, instead of using green amp, if we can go for what you call multi-layer green amp, and then see whether we can bring in a better reality of the catchment characteristics in terms of infiltration and then all those things. Because as I said, we are also interested in pushing the water into the ground for future use. So if we want to do that, we not only have to get the infiltration component, how it get reorganized within the soil, what will be the recharge to the groundwater, those are all the important. So this is very important for us. And then we have done that. I don't want to go into the details, but we have done this multi-layer green amp model, and then this paper has come in 2023, Balaji. Last year it has come in Urban Water Journal, and then you can see the details. I'll stop here, and then Balaji will take this model, he will take and then explain how we have utilized in other places. Thank you very much.
This is PDF, is it? Yeah. Yeah. Very good morning. All right. Just to continue on what my colleague, Professor Murthy, just spoke about. Through my presentation, I want to reiterate some of the points that were highlighted by many of the speakers yesterday. I think Marcos, Peter, Daniel, I think many of them spoke about the importance of blue-green infrastructure. And essentially, through some of our work, we are trying to see how best to develop algorithms that can be incorporated into the model, and also to take it further and then apply it at a regional scale. So that's what we are trying to do. So I think this is a map that you saw earlier. We are bestowed with a lot of these water bodies, and then we have a complex interconnection of many of these water bodies. And then ultimately the city is located here close to the coast. So much of what is happening is basically near the coast, and then there is a lot of floodwaters that are arising from elsewhere in the watershed, and then they are getting into the cities. So when we want to develop a regional scale model, we want to see how many of these green blue infrastructure, be it bioretention cell or green roofs or rain garden or isolated detention structures, how can many of these things can be integrated together so that you are able to look at these diffused systems. When you want to do something like a city of 1,000 tanks program, where a lot of this green blue infrastructure are implemented or planned at a very large scale and then implemented at a watershed wide scale, what would be the impact of that on the flood? So that is what we were trying to do, and then we were trying to build the models or improve the algorithms that are there within the model in order to improve some of those capabilities. So, so we were trying to take care of some of these things by developing what is called as the multi-layer green and damped model. And then the first level of modeling we wanted to see, because when you want to do this optimization and when you want to look at what kind of green blue infrastructure will give you the necessary level of flood reduction and things like that, if you want to do it at the watershed wide scale, it becomes quite difficult. So we wanted to do it through some sort of a clustering analysis, and then in that clustering analysis then we try to group watersheds that are of similar in nature, and then try to do some of these modeling at the representative basins within each of those clusters, and then try to integrate them at the river basin scale. And then when we want to do this, we also wanted to look at the existing manuals, the existing codal provisions that are there for implementing some of these green blue infrastructure. So we looked at some of the recommendations that are there within the Indian Green Building Council. So as part of that recommendation, if you see, so essentially any plot size that is exceeding 500 square meter, so 10% of the site should be left out for green spaces. So within this green space is a potential area that is available for us to implement any of this green blue infrastructure, as well as 75% of the exposed roof area can be thought of as roof gardens or green roofs and things like that. So in addition to that, the Chennai Metropolitan Development Authority, so they have provisions in terms of what is the maximum plot coverage for various different residential types. So they are given as part of this combined building development rules. I'm sure many of the metropolitan area will have very similar sort of rules. So in fact, the part of the exercise why we are doing some of these things is also to see, is there a way in which some of the modeling exercise that we do, can it actually inform some of these building development rules? So some of these regulations, can it be changed for some of the locality based on the geology as well as the hydrology, topography and things like that. So we are trying to look at some of those things and then try to use that as constraints within the model. We are also looking at many of the setback requirements and things like that, so that some of these setback spaces and things like that could be actually used for rehabilitating or retrofitting some of the already existing grey infrastructure. So essentially, so if you say that this is the plot area and then part of it is accommodated by the impervious area. So within this impervious area, so what part of it can be available for permeable pavements or bioretention cell or roof gardens, and then what part of it can be available for some of these other low impact development measures. So in fact, based on some of the criteria, we said bioretention cell, rain gardens and infiltration trench and swales, they will not occupy more than 10% of the existing urban impervious area, as well as the permeable pavements will probably occupy maximum of 10% of impervious area, and then the green roofs will not occupy more than 25% of the urban rooftop area. So these are all some of the upper caps that we probably assumed as part of this particular study, so that when we do the optimization, what sort of combination will probably help us. And then we used many of these data sets in terms of topography, land use, soils, slopes, rainfall and things like that. So many of these attributes, totally about 15 different attributes were taken together and they were all clustered together, and then we found that through the cluster analysis, about 9 clusters would bring about the maximum number of separability, and then we were able to get a good amount of separation between each of those clusters. So these 9 clusters were basically selected. So in these 9 clusters, if you see that there is a group called as G4, which has the highest runoff generation, and then there is another group called as G7 that has the least runoff generation. So most likely G4, this is basically, if you look at, so this is where most of the urban areas are congregated together. So this is Bay of Bengal. So the Chennai city is closer to this coast. So this is all the subbasins that are that has a huge amount of impervious area. That's why you have the highest amount of runoff generation. And then you have this group called as G7. They are also somewhere close to the coast, but then they also have sandy formation and then very less impervious area. So they have the least runoff generation. So and then based on the optimization that we were running using the multi-layer grain and damp model. So there were 2 objective function. I'm sorry, one of the objective function is basically missing. I think it's out of the screen. So one of the objective function is reduction of the runoff volume, and the another objective function is the reduction of the peak runoff. Right, so the peak value as well as the total runoff volume. So both of them we were trying to optimize. So this is basically the Pareto optimal function that you are seeing. So this I'm just presenting it for only one of the subbasin for one of the groups, but then you have similar such Pareto function for various different clusters of these subbasins together. So that you can actually try to find out what could be the optimal combination of the LIDs that will give you a compromise solution, right? So and then that's what I'm just summarizing as part of this the table here. So this is if you run the optimization function by using only the maximum volume reduction as the objective function, or if you use the maximum peak reduction as the objective function, or the last one is basically when you use both objective 1 as well as objective 2 and then as a compromising solution. So out of the total runoff that is routed, what percentage of the runoff is basically routed through the runoff from the impervious area is routed through the subbasin, and because of that how much volume reduction that we were able to get as well as the peak reduction we were able to get. So this is what is the sort of value that I don't want to go into the details of some of these things, but we can certainly discuss if there are a lot of interest. So essentially, so this distribution diagram basically tells us in each of the groups there are many subbasins, and each of those subbasins, what is the distribution of area that is coming under bioretention cell or rain gardens or roof gardens. So if you see the distribution, although they are distributed within a narrow range because of the constraints that we have given based on the existing manuals and things like that, one of the another thing that is also coming out here is we don't have a very good description of the soils below the urban area. So that's why you see a lot of these, values are all quite similar. Otherwise, if we have very good description of the geology as well as the soil type below the urban area, you will be able to see a lot of these differences among the various different LID measures. One of the reasons why there is a similar behavior is because of the lacuna in the data sets that are available. This is something that was highlighted and discussed with by the various speakers as well. Soil data is one of the biggest lacuna in the urban area. So nevertheless, with the exercise that we have done, so we have a good idea in terms of what is the amount of volume reduction as well as the peak reduction that can be achieved by the optimal combination of the LID that we can implement at the various different watershed wide level. So now that we have, you need to keep in mind, many of these LIDs are all off-channel LIDs. So that means, they all can be independently optimized and then they can be run together. But then what is the impact? What is the combined impact when you try to implement them together at the watershed wide level? And that's what we try to do. So once you have the optimal LID combinations that you have from the previous exercise, we try to include that and then implement that the algorithm at a watershed wide model. So this we did by looking at what combination of various different LIDs, what would be the area of LID that we have to implement for each of them, and how much amount of the runoff is basically routed through each of the LID, and how much is the volume reduction and peak reduction. So this is what we try to find out, and then route the water through the watershed and then try to look at what is the output at the end of it. So we did a complete hydrological modeling. The previous one was an optimization exercise. This is a full hydrologic modeling exercise where the optimization that we have achieved or the optimization value that we have achieved from the previous model is taken and then used as part of this hydrological modeling exercise. So we did a calibration and validation of the model where we implemented this multi-layer grain and damped algorithm for the entire model, not just for the LID. This is for even the rural basins also. We use the same infiltration model. And then on that, once you apply the LID, what is basically the impact of the LID? So that's what we are trying to look at. So the top one is basically the surface runoff that is generated. So this is basically the surface runoff at the outlet of the basin. And then this is basically the groundwater, the base flow generation at the outlet of the basin. So as you can see, many of these off-channel structure, they are designed for 1 in 2 year or 1 in 5 year return period kind of an event. So in fact, there was a comment that was made yesterday, the impact that the blue-green infrastructure can have, the nature-based solution can have, would be is a small component of a much more larger system. That's something that you need to keep in mind, and that is clearly reflected in this hydrological model also. So you can see that there is runoff reduction is happening. There is an increase in the groundwater system is also happening, but then it is not very large as you would, this is something that was expected and anticipated because these are all diffuse system that are implemented. These are off-channel systems that are implemented. So they are okay for small nuisance floods, but then for large floods you need to have large storage system and things like that. But nevertheless, as Murthy was saying, we have the problem of the flood as well as the drought. So whatever water that we are able to recharge into the ground, so that's a additional benefit that we have. So we can see that the blue-green infrastructure has improved our groundwater situation by 17%, and the aquifer recharge is improved by about 14%. So that's basically an added benefit or advantage that we have as part of this one. So as I said, the detention structure, we cannot look at blue-green infrastructure in isolation without looking at the detention structure. We have a lot of these traditional water bodies that are there that can serve the purpose of detention. There are more detention structures that can probably be installed, but then we don't have studies that actually looked at so what kind of storms and what kind of duration of storms or return period storms that these detention structures will be able to look at. So this is what something that we wanted to see in addition to the blue-green infrastructure. Can we have a lot more blue infrastructure that would probably help us minimize some of these the flood values. So in fact, we were trying to look at if you were to create some of these the blue infrastructure. So what is the sub-basin wise? What is the maximum amount of land that is available? Up to what depth maximum we will be able to store the water? And then what is the length based on the site constraints that are available for the weir and things like that. So many of these things were put together within an optimization framework in order to find out within a design flood sort of a framework. So one particular thing that I'm going to show is basically for one sub-basin that is located here, just as an illustration, but then that's what we tried. So essentially we tried to look and see for various different return period flood, what is the peak flow that is generated. If you were to put a detention structure, is it possible for us to change the 25-year return period flood into something looking like a 10-year flood or a 50-year flood to mimic like a peak of a 10-year flood and things like that. So in order for us to mimic that, in order for us not to increase the peak value beyond a 10-year return period flood, by installing this the new detention structure or operating this detention structure in such a manner, is it possible for us to reduce the flood? So that's what is the idea that we are trying to go through. So when we did some optimization trends, so I'm sorry, I'm skipping some of the details in between. So in order for us to for a 25-year flood, if for all the things that you are seeing here, for each of the sub-basins that you are looking here, so if I were to change the 25-year flood to mimic like a 10-year flood, what is the distribution, what is the range of area that we are looking at in order for us to implement this detention pond, and what would be the volume of that pond? So you need a good digital elevation model for us to basically do some of these things. And similarly, if we were to do a 50-year flood, of course the volume will be a lot more higher. If it is a 75-year flood that you want to reduce to mimic it to become like a 10-year flood, so then you would need to have a lot more storage volume. So this is what we are trying to see. So how the 25-year flood can actually become like the 10-year flood. So we are trying to reduce that by putting a detention structure so that the peak flow does not exceed that 61 meter cube per second, like what I demonstrated for that particular. So this is something that is done for each of them, and then we are trying to look at as a single objective as well as on a multi-objective basis, what could be done in order for us to do this blue infrastructure, so that can can complement some of the green infrastructure that we are looking at, be it bioretention cell or green roofs or infiltration trench and things like that. So many of these things can. So what we are finding, in order to just summarize what we have seen, there are the guidelines for SUTS and LID design is still very much lacking. I think many of the modeling studies can be geared in such a way that it will inform some of these guidelines. It will help us modify some of these guidelines. And in fact, the building regulations and land planning regulation can also be updated based on that. And then the influence of site characteristic on the hydraulic efficiency of the sites, I think this is something that need to be studied in a lot more greater detail. And there are a lot more studies that need to be done in order for us to understand the sites that are most suitable for a particular region. We also have to look at, in some of the places where water security is a major issue, we also have to look at the impact of sites on surface water resources as well as groundwater resources that will be available. So, if you look at the breadth of research that we do within the research group, myself, Professor Murthy, and several other colleagues within our department, they span the area of flood modeling and mitigation, modeling low impact development, and then real-time flood forecasting. So in fact, in this particular talk, myself and Murthy, we focus primarily on modeling low impact development, but then there are also other areas, I think, that were rightly pointed out by the other speakers. So, those are all other areas we are trying to focus as well. And in fact, we are trying to do a lot of data gathering by installation of sensors, as well as during monsoon season, as well as rainy season. Many of us are out in the fields collecting a lot of this valuable data, so that we are able to calibrate and validate our model. And then once we have trust in our model, then we can actually use it for the various different purposes, be it for flood mitigation, or for low impact development, or for real-time flood forecasting. So that's it from me, and then be happy to interact. Thank you very much.
Bom, agradeço a apresentação dos palestrantes. Agora convido a mesa para apresentar o Felipe, pesquisador.
Tá aqui, né?
Tudo certo, né? Preciso levar isso.
Good morning, everyone. I will try my best English. Maybe it's not so the best, but okay. And we have the study about floodplain areas mapping, and we think in IPT that it's a good example of an instrument for territorial and urban planning. It's a work we did in city of Campinas. It's a municipality near from here. But before we talk about floodplain mapping, I want to provoke with some questions. I think it's important for us, like human beings, to keep living on this planet if we are prepared to face climate extremes. So it's difficult to answer this question. I don't know we scientists have the answer of the question, but you have to ask ourselves every day about, are you prepared for the extremes? So the age of extremes, like Eric Robsbaum book. Now we are in the age of climate extremes. So as my colleagues showed in their presentation before me, we have the same problem here in São Paulo. The greater São Paulo region has floods, has droughts, even the same hydrological year, so we have floods, and now we are experiencing rainfall, but a week before this event we are experiencing droughts. We are questioning there will be rainfall, enough rainfall for fuel our reservoirs. So now we're looking for rainfall, and start to another worries about flooding. So an example of I think so. Greater São Paulo is an excellent living word lab for climate studying, modeling climate streams. So in the same small fraction of our territory, so it's maybe like 5% of the São Paulo state, with a lot of people living here, like 30 million people. One of the greatest metropolitan regions of the world. With the same, we have a lot of colors on this map. The colors means problems of droughts. In the red areas, there are water supply areas, are important water supply areas for our metropolis. They are a climate trend for droughts, so less rainfall. On the blue areas, we have some areas that are prone for landslides because are increasing on rainfall, the trend of increasing rainfall, but they are areas of a lot of people living, a lot of relief is very difficult, so you have problems with landslides, it's geological risk. On the most populous area, it's on orange here, the populous area we are facing for urban heat islands, and rainfall intensity is trending for increase. So the problem of the rainfall intensity is floods on urban areas. So in a small fraction of the territory, you have all of the kind of trends, climate trends, related to extreme events on the same. So we have what you have for today. You have a city that it's very dense, very occupied, especially on floodplain areas. São Paulo has chosen on the past for occupying floodplain areas, maybe because it's best for topography, but it's not best for rivers. So we occupied all floodplain areas. We have major streets that mainly was constructed above rivers. So we rectified, buffered a lot of rivers. So we have the blue map make São Paulo of rivers, but São Paulo is for avenues today. So we accelerated the flow rates. We have high in urbanization ratios. We have progressive soil sailing. In the green points, maybe you can see here on the map, they are retention basins, so are almost 100 of them in São Paulo. But this is the components that shows that São Paulo is the city of chronic drainage problems. So everything here, it's like the ingredients of a chaos, organized, not so organized sometimes, chaos that are drainage. Speaking of chaos, we have here a report for our civil defense for natural reserves. I don't like this term. I don't think it's so natural. I think it's more anthropized hazard, not natural. But we can, the term we use here, maybe it's strange, but we have like 11,000 events of flooding, 3,000 events of landslides, like 60,000 felling trees and branches, I'm thinking. So in 10 years, we have all this map painted with natural hazard events, occurrences of a lot of magnitudes, some extremes, or not so much. But it's important to see that the urbanized area has so much events, so we don't know how we can live on the city with a lot of that problems. But we are also, I can question, why we are still buffering, we are still rectifying rivers. It don't work. So here we have an avenue on the eastern part of São Paulo. It's called Aricanduva River. And in blue we have the original flow of this river. And now we have an avenue that with a channel confined, sad on the middle of the city. So we are still rectifying rivers. And I think urban drainage requires innovative solutions and policies. It's important that the urban drainage plans face the future. Decisions must be made with these plans. So it's important that the future can see, the plans can foresee future. It's strange to say that, but it's important to repeat to ourselves. If you want to do better plans, we do better urban planning, you have to all day or have to repeat for ourselves. Don't petrify, don't buffer, don't hide rivers. Try to mitigate some problems. So the importance of science and technology is to do the best. So we have to change our mindset maybe, or try to give more information for everyone. That's important to change our mindset. So we have to understand how watersheds are, how our rivers, the river stock. I always like to think like that. Rivers almost can tell a story. So we have here an example of a small city on the interior of São Paulo that we study a flood-prone area. That's on the most critical part of the settlement. We are asked, why is flooding here? Why is it so critical to drain this area here? We have the pointing, the asterisk in red in here. The city hall asked IPT, why is flooding here? So we have a settlement that prior for urban occupation, we have a pond on the area. So it's have natural trained to accumulate water. Why we put city on this place? So the people who live that, they call, there are frogs here. So maybe frogs like water, like wetlands. Why don't use this place as a natural wetland for mitigating the critical drainage problems? So we have also small bridges that were constructed back on the 19th century for a highway. So why it's not working anymore? Maybe because you have a lot of natural space and now it's very impervious, very urban. So how to train people, how to make people look for the natural areas that could be used for preserving our water, preserving our basins. So it's very difficult to do that. You can see why it's very difficult to control urban waters in Brazilian cities. I think it's very difficult to do that because we don't look at the rivers, we look at the urban, we look at the buildings, we look at the asphalt, we look at the pavement. But it's not difficult only in Brazil. I have some examples here that it's common to see that cities must. It's difficult for cities dealing with water. So we have Tokyo here with a lot of large reservoirs for tidal waves and flood management. And you have here in Filipinas people walking on the wires here, escaping from the flood from below. So it's very difficult to cope with water, urban. I think it's necessary that people look at these pictures and ask every day, why are you doing the right thing? So it's important here, it's on some results of modeling in several areas that we studied in IPT. We have here a basin with like 20% of urban area, and we modeled this in the same basin with different urban rate. So we have like one for flood for inflow today, and we modeled 40%, 60%, 80%, 100%, and we can see the flow rates skyrocketing. So the modeling shows that the flow rate could be so big as 4 times bigger than today. just for urbanizing. And here we have response time on the opposite direction. So when we urbanize, we increase flood, we increase flow rate, but we reduce response time. Less time for acting, less time for civil response, civil defense response. So, and that's one of the consequences that we can see, we still see on our urban areas. It's very difficult to. We have another plot here with the same result. We have several sub-watersheds that we studied for Campinas, and we can see a very clear trend of increasing urbanization rate, increasing runoff coefficients. So more urbanization means more runoff. This is a binomial that must be faced. So it's a need to break this binomial. It's not fair for our watersheds or natural places to face so much soil sealing when you have urban areas. We have so many studies for mitigate the effect, the consequence of urbanization. So it's unfair that we are still imperfect sealing soil. We are still removing the capability and natural capability of watersheds to cope with floods. So it's we need to adopt measures, we need to adopt public policies to mitigate urbanization impacts. I think it's clear for us scientists, but it's not so clear for public agents. We have to, I think we have to accommodate them. I think it's the better word for that. We have to show these graphs every day. Maybe they can change their mindset for that. So we have here Lajeado Basin. It's a basin we studied. It's in eastern São Paulo city. It's here we have the prior urban area. We have incredibly in 30s. São Paulo was the city of forests, was the city of farms, and now we have farms and forests of buildings and gray and a lot of pavements. With the same area, we have the changing of the trend of rural area here, green, and what it means for hydrology. That's the important part. We have two hydrographs here. The first, on green here, we have the response time and the flow rates for the rural basin here. We have 9 hours to achieve like 50 cubic meters per second of peak flow. 9 hours. With the urban basin here, we have 2 hours to face 3 times more water. And if you think that 50 cubic meters is the natural flow rate for the basin, in 40 minutes we achieve the same flow rate, not 9 hours. So how can we drain this area that has prior of urbanization 9 hours to achieve this peak flow? Now we have 40 minutes. So it's very difficult to show this for civil defense. Because civil defense asks, we can't remove people, it's so fast, water rises so fast. It's clear here that urbanization made everything faster, more water, more difficult to store. How we can mitigate that? And another examples. We studied in a city of Várzea Paulista, it's near São Paulo. We look at a basin that is still unoccupied, but we compare with the results of urbanization with a twin basin. It's almost the same area, the same format. So we can, that is full occupied. So we can see that the full occupied basin is the red hydrograph here. So we have a lot of water. So we have a flow of, outflow of 100 cubic meters per second in like 1 hour or so. And on the basin that is still unoccupied, so we have the blue here. So we have less than half of water, and a response time that's a little less than like 3 hours. So the same trend, less response time, more water. So how we can face of that? And the City Hall of Várzea Paulista wants to do the same thing that they did with the red basin, with this basin that is still green, little, beautiful. So we show them that if they occupy this basin using a lot of green infrastructure, a lot of mitigating of urbanization, they can reduce. So even with occupation, if you use pervious pavement, we use green roofs, we use some structures that are better for environment to mitigate urban flood, just show them that they will reduce the peak flow of the basin. So it's possible to urbanize reducing peak flow. So why we are still choosing the easiest path maybe? We can concrete everything. We are still concreting everything. So here I have a publication we did for Campinas, unfortunately only in Portuguese, but it is one of our aims to do a publication in Portuguese that is very clear for every public agent to know what kind of tools we have, what kind of modeling tools we have, what kind of modeling possibilities are, what kind of response we need to do about that. So we map flood-prone areas looking at two situations. We have an urbanized area today and more urbanized in the future. So what flood-prone areas we could expect? The QR code here is for downloading this publication if you want, but the presentation I think it's also will be available for you. So we have here where our study area. So we study Capivari Basin. It's a major basin that flows through Campinas. Maybe here you have Campinas, but Capivari Basin pass along the city. So we also discuss watershed basin planning. Here we have the techniques. I will pass fast through here, but it's only to show that you have modeling, hydrologic modeling for transforming rainfall into runoff, and you have hydraulic modeling transforming runoff into flood-prone areas. So we have here the hydrological model, we have the hydraulic model, but we want to discuss here this map. We have Campinas municipality here, so downstream Capivari River. And you say that the colors on the map here, it's the trend for urbanization for the future. So we studied 30 years after today, so 2050. It's our scenario for flood-prone areas, future occupation. Every basin that are on hot colors here, so orange, red, are watersheds that will be more urbanized. So we can see that not only in Campinas has some basins that will be more urbanized, but we can see upstream here more basins that will be urbanized in the future. So if you only Campinas look at your spatial politicians, only Campinas look at that, put on the master plan, I don't want to occupy, I want to mitigate urban and perverse. It's impossible to cope because another cities here upstream is still using the same old urbanization techniques. So more water will reach Campinas, even if Campinas do their job. So that's the plot here shows. Upstream, the scenario is we can measure like 30% more inflows because of urbanization upstream Campinas. And another several basin years that also show an potential increase for flows because of urbanization. So we have to look at the watershed. It's important that planning look at watershed scale and not city scale. And this trend here, we don't use climate trends. It's only about runoff increase, about urbanization increase, or about impervious areas increasing. And what it means that for rainfall with a return period of 5 years, so it's a frequent rainfall, right? We have a trend for 10%, almost 10% more expected flood-prone areas increase. So for a frequent rainfall event, we can expect more than almost 10% more flood-prone areas. So it's enough to say that it's needed less rainfall for the same flood areas for today, and less rainfalls means more current, more frequent rainfall events. So if you have some flood events today, we can expect more flood events if the city is still impervious, is still increasing the runoff. So that's the result of this modeling. That's important to see that the flood-prone areas increase more with rainfall with less than 5 years of return period. For the extreme here, rainfall events, 25, 100 years for return periods, this is not so prevalent, so it's less impactful. So it's important to bring some homework that Campinas did for us. They decided to put on the urban law that it's forbidden to occupy natural floodplain areas. So we have the natural floodplain for rivers, and in Campinas they are similar for our área de preservação permanente. You know, the term here in Brazil it's about for Campinas the APP is for the natural floodplain areas. So we have a lot of green here. So not the city will be impacted about flood because of this regulation. So what São Paulo has done with natural floodplain areas, we have a lot of. Oops. Oh, sorry. Yeah. No? Acho que é o problema no slide. Aconteceu ontem. Não, não problem. No, just this slide is problem. Oh, the presenter don't like my slide, but I was saying that São Paulo has transformed our natural floodplain areas in gray areas. So it's different from Campinas, that it's very preserved, like so. So we have this graph here, all green, and yellow means that the natural floodplain areas for Campinas are forests, are vegetation, are pastures, but not urban areas. São Paulo, no. São Paulo has only urban areas, so the slide is problematic, but it's okay. So how we can answer the first question of this presentation? Part of the solution, I think, it's to rescue the natural flood control capacity of the watersheds. So none better than nature do flood control. So nature has 4.5 billion years controlling flood on natural areas. So we don't know how to do that, but nature has the answer. So we have to rescue the natural flood control capacity of watersheds. So we also look terms of small cities, but it's important that we know the solution. We know that we need grey infrastructure, not so much, but we need green infrastructure. We need to use pavements that are pervious. We need rooftops, green rooftops. We need to increase infiltration. We know all that. But the most important, I think, the most important answer of the question. It's how to do that, not what we want to do. We need to put society and public authorities on the same page. It's important. Maybe population can kindly ask our public authorities how to not do the urban water policy. The main goal is to live together with urban floods without facing losses. So it's very difficult for a population to achieve this. I think this picture shows that. You have green infrastructure made by population. If populations appropriate for our green infrastructure, our watersheds, population must adopt a watershed. I think it's the most important part of this presentation is about that. We need to face the problem together with public agents. We need to face the problem with the public politicians, maybe everyone that is in charge. So the solution is, it's important that people use the creativity for facing these problems with the importance that they need. So we have to answer together the question. So we have here the closing thoughts. The prevalence of extreme events. We need to use watershed-based studies. So it's important. It's one of the lessons learned from Campinas. We need to look at replicability. Maybe we need to do good practices that can be repeatable in a lot of territories. I need to emphasize that it's important to strengthen the relationship between urban drainage and urban law. So it's almost the same here. Watershed-based studies and urban law, urban drainage must talk the same language. So that's the lessons learned with Campinas' work, and a lot of work were done with modeling. So it's that. Thank you. Sim.
Bom, vamos dar início à próxima etapa. Primeiramente, agradecer as excelentes apresentações aí dos palestrantes. Tá? Então, convido para compor a mesa para os debates, né, o professor Murphy, para comparecer à mesa. Professor Baladi, Felipe Falseta e, como debatedor, a professora Renata Moreira, da Federal do ABC. Vamos pôr a mesa de debates. Pode passar para eles assinar, por gentileza.
Good morning for everyone. Can you hear me? Can you hear me from here? Yes. So I've tried to speak English for all the time here. I don't know if I will be able to do it. So please, the translator, pay attention, because in any moment I maybe switch my language here. So thank you for your presentation, your 3 great presentations. And first, I have 2 main questions here. First one, you Professor Murthy and Balaji, you brought here integrated vision of water resource uses and management. we are more used to talk about flood problems and scarcity problems, but you brought also water supply and water supply networks integrated to this problem, and water networks of sewage, and all of this vision integrated. It's really great. And you brought this problem of thinking the basin from the regional scale or level to the sub-basin level, and how to modulate and how to think solutions from these two levels, and leads at regional and local scale. But the question I have is, how in your country you manage these different levels? We have to do it, we have to have a management system of water resources, technical capacities in these two levels, to think regional and local and model this together and think solutions together, and design the solutions in different levels of different frequencies, scenarios. I don't know, tempo de retorno in English, return period, different solutions for different return periods. This is a combination of solutions and different scales. So, in your experience, how is this management system to deal with these different scales or levels of defining the problem and defining solutions? This is the first question. And the second question is more to Felipe Falseta. The two first presentations brought a really interesting approach of thinking optimum solutions from modeling, and then available solutions, and optimum combined solutions. So here in São Paulo, for example, we have a problem that areas highly urbanized, the range of solutions is considerably smaller. So we don't have space. We need to transform a lot of the city to if we use small solutions or pulverized solutions. So what is the solution when we have a highly dense urbanized place? So these are two main questions to start the debate, and then if you want to, I will take notes from who wants to make other questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your very precise, finding out how we go about, particularly when we talk about integrated planning, design, and operation. Right now, the management structure in the governance is silos. In Chennai, we have the water supply and the domestic sewage. They are managed by one particular organization called Chennai Metro Water Supply and Sewerage Board. Whereas these ponds, lakes, and then water bodies, they all are done by another organization, CMDA, the PWD.
GCC,
huh?
Greater Chennai Corporation.
Greater Chennai Corporation.
Water Resources.
So, Water Resources Department of Greater Chennai. And very rarely they talk to each other. And but we have been trying to tell wherever, in whichever forum that is possible, everywhere we keep saying there has to be a lot more coordination if you want to achieve sustainability in your solutions. I have given an example. They are thinking of big time in terms of recycling and reuse of treated water. And as I said, already 20 MLD plants have been working, and then they need to store this water in some water body. So you go in and store this water body for the treated wastewater, and the rains come, and already the storage is full, so this is not going to work as a detention pond. So now imagine scaling it up to a much, much larger scale, where most of these small water bodies, they are actually they're stored with treated wastewater. And in every forum, whenever we talk to these people, we request them to bring the people from the water resources department to sit there. And then we keep telling them that please just don't go ahead and then do all these things on your own, because come rainy season, if they're not available for you as a flood detention ponds, then you're going to have a lot of problems. And we actually keep telling the government in different forums, wherever we can, saying that probably they can have one organization which looks at all the water infrastructure, wherever we can. And that is the only way we can do. Because if you don't do it, then you will not be able to implement whatever the plans we give, integrated planning, because they're all linked to each other. And then, if you don't do this integrated planning, then they'll be working forever how to solve the water supply problem separately, how to solve because they have so much of money invested in the last 2 decades in terms of rainwater management. But then they have made the rules, promulgated bylaws saying that everybody should do the rainwater harvesting. But then this particular fact is not considered in terms of their water supply management. If you do a lot of rainwater harvesting, rainwater management, then the people won't require that much of water from the city. So why should the city still go and then give this much water? They don't do that. And if you do a lot of rainwater harvesting, that is the source control, then it's going to have an impact on your flood modeling itself, on the way the floods propagate. That again, they don't do that. Rainwater harvesting is done by somebody else, and then mostly through informal sector, non-governmental organizations, but then you don't formalize. So we have to tell the government that they have to look at these things in an integrated way, and then there should be one organization which considers all. And we also have another organization which goes and then does lake rejuvenation, and then where they're mostly looking at the ecological aspects of the lakes, and then the quality of water in the lakes, and then the pollution aspects, and so on and so forth. But they have to look at all these things, because if you look at water sensitive urban design, the concept of water sensitive urban design, the concept has been there. I mean, integrated water management, the concept has been there. But somewhere down the line, we have to convince these people that, they have to they have to implement together. Recently, the Chennai city has formulated a company called Chennai Waterways Rejuvenation Corporation. Again, if you do Chennai Waterways Rejuvenation Corporation, and then you don't have the people with flood management sitting there, then what do? You need to, I need to know that Chennai water rejuvenation scheme should be there, because if you don't do that, then we not only have the floods, but we will have toxic floods. We have a lot of garbage that is thrown into these waterways, and then when you have the floods, it actually spreads this toxicity to the entire city, not just to the water. But they have to look at these things in that. But you're right, and we have been, shouting from the rooftops. It's been for more than a decade or there, but we don't lose hope. One day they will, they will do it. One day they will hear it. If you keep talking about it.
I think I'm fine.
It's a very interesting and at the same time very difficult answer. I think it's very difficult to answer a question, because when I say almost every time we talk about green infrastructure, we always the same answer. We don't have space for that. We have an urbanized area. We have a gray city, so we don't have space. But we chose on the past to use the space of the water for occupying with city. So we need to, when I say I said on the presentation that we need to put population on contact of that, it's important to understand that not only new settlements, not only new urban developments need to construct green solutions for drainage. It's important that all citizens can solidarize with the problem. So it's very difficult to convince people that they need to put some green areas on their buildings, but you must do that on some way. Maybe we can. I think it's important for City Hall to receive the taxes, so the city can live. But it's important to maybe less taxes or discounts. If it's very difficult to do that, you need to be less money. It's very difficult for a city hall to, like São Paulo, they don't have to receive a lot of taxes, you have to receive less, but you have to incentivize, I don't know the word in English, I understand. I think you have to put people on the play for doing some green. So it's important that some discounts maybe, or some tax reliefs. I don't know how to do that, but it's important. It's the formal city is occupying and occupied a lot of water parts. So I think the solution maybe can be to do tax reliefs for green areas on existing buildings, because São Paulo, it's a lot of spaces have been occupied. So it's very difficult to encounter some space for green infrastructure. So you have to make these spaces again. So I think the only way is to look for private places that you can put some green infrastructure. It's not possible to cope with only squares, only playgrounds, only existing green areas. We're changing green areas for gray infrastructure. So it's very strange, not so. We have to combine solutions. We have to put people on the main reason of the problem. Maybe people can see that they are responsible also for the water that the pipes drain or not drain, or the river flows more than usual. So I think people need to know that they are responsible for the problem. The academy knows that. Maybe the population doesn't know that, or the populations think that that's a problem for politics. I don't need anything about urban drainage, and I'm not responsible for anything. But I'm a lot of my concrete on my house. I have a lot of gray areas on my living place. But I don't want to change that. I want that the government solve my problem. So I think the part of the solution is make population to become interested in changing putting some green on their gray areas. So I think large urban equipment are easier to do that. Maybe malls, maybe some large buildings, but also small residents can do that. I think a green rooftop can be accessible. But to be accessible, you have to do tax relief. We need to subsidize the people that they can do that because they don't have money. It's very difficult to make some changes on our houses. People don't have money for that. So we have to put money or investments. We have to cope with that. I think it's very difficult for public, but I think it's the solution path for that.
Thank you. So we have one inscription too. Anybody else?
And then we close.
Okay. So please, I don't know. Yes.
Question to all the panelists. My name is Suresh Ravila. It's a question to all the panelists. how do you integrate the land use changes or socio-economic processes into your models? Because ultimately, whose data and for whom are you doing this? So is it only for a technological solution? And there is a limitation in the Global South on monitoring stations. So where the data comes, what is it used for? And do you have any processes evolved to improve your models with the help of other people and processes, which I was talking yesterday? Because ultimately, you are doing only for a technological solution, but it is for somebody. And maybe some people play an important role. So do you think your models can be refined to accommodate those, in particular land use changes which are very fast moving and rapidly urbanizing Global South? How do you accommodate that? Because that will impact runoff.
So that's a very good question, Dr. Suresh. So I think
Sorry, let's do a round of questions, and then you all answer all of them, because we are really sorry to interrupt you.
Bom dia, meu nome é Daniela Richards, coordenadora de uso e ocupação do solo na cidade de São Paulo. Apenas um complemento, a legislação recentemente revista agora este ano passou a exigir que haja o plantio de uma árvore a cada 50 metros quadrados de área permeável em cada um dos lotes da cidade. Essa regra é uma exigência para lotes com área a partir de 500 metros quadrados, portanto, inclui também as casas e também inclui as reformas. Então, toda reforma com um acréscimo de área superior a 50 metros quadrados precisa ter área permeável. A área permeável ela varia de 15% a 30%, dependendo da área que você possui um terreno no município, e, a partir disso, você tem a obrigatoriedade de uma árvore. Existe um leque de opções para que seja adotado, como os telhados verdes, o plantio de árvores. O reservatório de retenção de água de chuva ele é obrigatório também, mas, dentro do leque de opções, as pessoas sempre escolhem ou os reservatórios ou o plantio de árvores, que agora passou a ser obrigatório. Paredes verdes, telhados verdes, são soluções técnicas que a gente não vê corriqueiramente no licenciamento. O que a gente mais vê realmente quando a população vem é uma reclamação de tipo, mas eu preciso realmente colocar isso no meu terreno porque eu vou perder área e assim como é que eu vou conseguir fazer? E eu não estou falando de mercado imobiliário, de shopping, eu estou falando também das casas. Então, existe sim uma necessidade da gente chegar até a população, mas como chegarmos até a população, né? Além da lei. Além do diálogo nas universidades. Como fazermos isso? Além do momento de audiências públicas numa revisão de uma lei? Talvez só as audiências públicas que a gente faz antes da promulgação de uma lei não sejam suficientes para explicar para a população todo esse background que a gente está estudando aqui, conversando, que a gente já tem há anos de estudo, para uma população, em algumas semanas, entender o que a gente está querendo dizer. Então, como a gente fazer diferente? Como a gente chegar nessa população antes da hora da promulgação de uma lei nova? Essa que é a pergunta.
Então, a gente ouve essas três perguntas e depois segue para as respostas. Desculpa, eu falei em português.
Bom dia, é um prazer estar mais um dia junto de todos e todas aqui. Zoraide, pessoa da Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Norte. Eu acompanho muito a pergunta aqui da colega sobre a gente pensar, sobretudo aqui no Brasil, sobre como os novos instrumentos de participação social podem acomodar reformulações, já que audiências públicas não conseguem mais chegar, e trazer, sobretudo, quando a gente fala em comunidades, populações, num aspecto diverso, numa linguagem mais acessível, porque a gente traz. Você vai numa audiência para um licenciamento de um empreendimento, de uma grande obra, a gente traz normas técnicas. A população não acompanha essa linguagem. Como a gente trazer a linguagem do conhecimento técnico e científico, considerando a linguagem popular? Eu acho que a gente precisa popularizar, de fato, as audiências públicas, porque a gente tem feito da audiência pública apenas um instrumento formal, mas não de esclarecimento e que englobe a compreensão. Então, quando a população diz, olha, eu não vou construir no meu terreno porque vai perder espaço, o que é que significa isso e qual a contribuição disso para a gente pensar efetivamente essas ações? Então, acho que a gente precisa reformular, inclusive, os instrumentos que hoje a gente tem de controle participativo, como as audiências públicas. A ineficácia que hoje esses instrumentos têm, que são meramente formais, e não consegue, de fato, trazer a população para estar engajada e compreendendo também como processo de transformação. Acho que é mais uma complementação do que uma pergunta. Obrigada.
Obrigada. Thank you. So we now can proceed with the answers.
Okay. So first, the question of Suresh. So I think, some of the work that we are trying to do at IIT Madras, essentially to inform the building development rules. So when we say the building development rules, they are for retrofitting of the existing areas, as well as if there are any new areas where the city is contemplating on developing, how would you develop those areas? What could be the maximum plot coverage for those areas? And within the available, the green space within the area, what sort of low impact development measures will be more appropriate and things like that. So some of the models and things like that we are developing is actually to inform that. So City of Chennai right now is going through a third master plan. So we are trying to work with the city, and then we are making them aware of some of the models that we are trying to develop and build to see how some of this can inform their plan and then inform the building development rules so that some of this can actually become mainstream. So now coming to the question that was,
What goes in and what comes out? What data goes in, what comes out? If there is a limitation on monitoring station or data availability, what comes out is not reliable. That's not enough.
That's true. So there is still, as I demonstrated in my study, there is still a lot more data that needs to be developed and then informed. But nevertheless, I think, at least there is a way forward. So, and we know where data is lacking and where more data needs to be developed. And there was another excellent question in terms of, sorry, I'm going to be answering in English, and hopefully, I could catch that in the translation. You need to plant a tree every 50 square meters or something like that on a 500 square meter plot. So I think this is also something that is quite popular and very common within India. And how would I justify that to the real estate or a person who is actually owning that piece of house to say, why should I make use of that plot to actually put this green infrastructure, what sort of impact that it is basically going to give. So as I told very clearly, in terms of flood, it may not have that significant of an impact. But then this blue-green infrastructure has multitudes of benefits. I think the follow-up question was also very, very much similar and related to that. And in terms of this public hearing, how would we impress upon this so that actually people understand it is not advisable to pave every single square meter of the area, and there is a lot of benefit, ecological benefit as well as hydrological benefit by leaving certain amount of the plot area as unpaved for blue-green infrastructure. I think it has the other benefits, of course, I think will be discussed later, is going to be in terms of the urban heat island impact. So, the impact due to some of these on flooding, yes, it could be for 1 in 2 year or a 1 in 5 year return period kind of an event. It may have some impact, but then for a larger event, it may not have from the flood perspective. But then, over a long term, if you look at through the summer season, they do have other additional benefits in terms of urban heat island effects and things like that. I think in a larger forum, I think a lot more other co-benefits that comes along with this nature-based solution also have to be impressed upon. Otherwise, we would be pushing this agenda on a unidimensional way. It has to be pushed as a multidimensional problem. Then only I think there will be a lot more buy-in from the public as well as the people as well. Yeah.
I just add to what Balaji said regarding Professor Suresh's question. Yes, garbage in, garbage out. So when you do this modeling, I quote, I think I ascribe it to Einstein. He said, any field experimentalist or experimentalist, everybody believes that person except experimental himself or herself, while a mathematical modeler, theoretician, only theoretician believes in herself or himself and rest of the people don't believe. So when I do this modeling, yes, first question they will ask is, can I believe your colorful pictures? Because you might have drawn them yourself, not your model which is giving. So definitely calibration, modeling, and all the what data we are putting in, we have to do it. And yes, there are many places in Global South where you don't have the data. So in fact, in my institute, we have been working in an area called data scarce hydrology. When you don't have the data, you have the data only from what you call global data sets. Let's say DEM. I need to build a DEM. I need that for my flood modeling. But I don't have LIDAR. LIDAR data is what I need to get proper flood zoning and proper flood, but I don't have. I still depend on my SRTM data or some other data. So what do? How do I best utilize this data that is available to me by doing bias correction and things like that? Another thing is, don't believe in what I'm saying. So I will not give a definitive answer. I will only say 30% probability or 80% probability. So I work in we should give the answers in terms of probabilities or what we call uncertainty. You need to model, you need to understand the uncertainty, and then you inform that uncertainty to your decision maker. So the decision maker will decide whether they would take what you're saying with a pinch of salt or a bag full of salt. And then they will take their decisions. That is one thing. Now, if this is the scene for what is existing, imagine I'm trying to design it, plan it for next 50 years, because most of the infrastructure is a very costly affair. And you do and design and plan it for 50 years. And then you're going to say that I'm going to put climate change effect on this. I take the data from GCMs, and I know that GCM data has got any amount of uncertainty in it. Now, there again, you say land use, land change. I take some land use, land change that is now, and then I have to predict what would be the land use, land change, and LULC covers in the future, 50 years. So there's a lot of uncertainty. Yes, we go in the new sleuth model, that model, cellular automata, and then all those things. So given these things, this thing is we need to have a paradigm change in our planning, the thinking itself. In fact, we go and then we propagate this thought of planning should not be static. It's not that I plan now and implement it. It has to be a dynamic planning. This is where the concept of model predictive control that the company, chemical companies and other, they do model predictive control. That is, they predict using models what would be the next 1 day of operation is going to be, but then they'll implement whatever they come only for next 1 year, 1 hour, and then again they take the data of what you observed. So same way, model predictive control concepts for planning and design, dynamic planning. This is different from phase-wise implementation. Phase-wise implementation is different compared to dynamic planning and then phase-wise implementation. Those things are coming up, but it would take some time for us to convince the field engineers. But we have to do that. Thank you.
Okay, I will try to answer Daniela's question because another chirurgical question. It's very, but I will try to do that in Portuguese. I think it's better because I will try to explain. The question was in Portuguese, so I will try to answer in the same language. Eu vejo assim com bons olhos a política da cidade de São Paulo de colocar aí essa exigência no sentido de obrigar aí uma plantio de uma árvore, aí você tem também a questão da cota ambiental, você tem vários instrumentos, mas ao mesmo tempo eu vejo com um pouco de ceticismo no sentido de que nós vivemos num país onde as pessoas são criativas. E por que eu digo isso, né? Criativos no sentido pejorativo, né? Eu vejo que isso pode levar com que as pessoas deixem de registrar suas reformas na prefeitura. No sentido de que ninguém vai fazer um registro de uma reforma se tiver uma exigência nesse sentido. A gente precisa trabalhar muito a questão de educação ambiental. Então, quando a gente fala de convencimento, aí já indo no mesmo, num gancho aí que é trazido pela colega do Rio Grande do Norte, a gente martelou na população, eu falo, talvez eu não, porque eu não era ainda um gestor público, nem um agente público, nem um pesquisador nessa época, mas eu digo, todos os nossos antigos gestores martelaram na cabeça da população que canalizar rio funciona. Esconder rio, tamponar rio funciona. Então, se a gente conseguiu fazer essa façanha, né, de convencer a população de que algo que a gente tem visto que não funciona e é exigido por boa parte da população como solução, né? Então, às vezes, mas por que a prefeitura não vem aqui e tampa esse córrego porque está enchendo na minha casa, né? Então, a gente conseguiu fazer esse trabalho de algum jeito. Então, eu entendo que para conseguir fazer o caminho inverso é necessário muito trabalho. E aí não é numa audiência pública que vai resolver. Eu acho que a gente tem que trabalhar antes. A gente tem que trabalhar a criança, a gente tem que trabalhar jovem, a gente tem que trabalhar a escola, a gente tem que trabalhar... Porque as crianças, elas acham que o leite ele vem da caixinha. Elas acham que a comida vem do mercado. Ela não vem do pasto, ela não vem do verde, ela não vem da natureza. Não é uma vaca que dá o leite. Na verdade, ela não dá o leite, a gente tem que tirar dela, mas enfim. Entendam como nesse sentido, né? A gente tem que colocar a educação ambiental nas criancinhas. Eu acho que a gente tem que mostrar para uma criança, olha, isso é um rio, olha, isso é uma nascente. A gente tem que encontrar. Tem alguns espaços aqui em São Paulo onde a gente ainda enxerga e ainda ouve, ainda sente cheiro de mato molhado. Então, sei lá, se a gente começar a colocar as nossas crianças para conhecer o que é uma bacia hidrográfica, porque uma bacia hidrográfica, pelo menos para mim, até o final do colégio, embora eu tenha tido a sorte de ter conhecido nascentes na época da escola, fui visitar a nascente do Tietê, para mim, bacia hidrográfica era a bacia do Amazonas, aquele negócio gigante no mapa do Brasil. Mas e se eu mostrar para meus alunos, minhas crianças, os pequenos, as bacias da sua redondeza, né? Olha, veja, essa rua faz parte de uma bacia. Você precisa conhecer o pequeno córrego que está na sua região e a pessoa precisa entender que tudo que ela produzir naquela bacia vai resultar em alguma coisa no ponto de saída dessas bacias. Então, a malha urbana se conecta com a malha natural. Se a gente não colocar isso na cabeça das crianças, eu acho que a gente não avança no sentido... Porque as pessoas vão sempre achar que é obrigação. A prefeitura está me obrigando a fazer isso. Por que eu vou colocar uma árvore no meu terreno? Por que eu vou plantar uma grama aqui, não vou ocupar, eu vou perder a área de lote, eu vou estar perdendo dinheiro nisso. Então, acho que isso a gente não consegue convencer adulto. Falo isso porque... por isso que eu falei na minha apresentação que a gente tem que ficar falando 500 mil vezes para a gente mesmo que tem que se convencer. Adulto só funciona assim. A gente sabe muito bem que é muito mais difícil aprender as coisas depois que a gente passa de uma certa idade. A gente não aprende nem as coisas boas. A gente costuma aprender muito bem as coisas ruins, mas as coisas boas é muito difícil. Então, se a gente não martelar para a juventude de que é necessário preservar, que se ela colocar uma árvore, ela vai reduzir a vazão, ela vai melhorar a qualidade do rio, ela vai ter uma qualidade de vida melhor, a gente não vai avançar. A gente vai continuar martelando essa questão. A gente vai perceber que a população vai fugir das regulamentações. Eu vou só encerrar aqui, mas no sentido de que a gente precisa, respondendo a pergunta, a gente tem que trabalhar muito mais nas escolas, a gente tem que levar isso, esse recado precisa ser levado de uma forma diferente. Se a gente esperar que nas audiências públicas a população vai aparecer, ela vai aparecer para pedir uma canalização, ela vai aparecer para colocar um piscinão, mas ela não vai enxergar que é parte do problema. Ela precisa enxergar que, se a gente não investir em verde, a gente está lascado. Vou usar uma palavra mais branda, mas é isso. A gente está numa situação bem desconfortável. Então, acho que a solução passa, né, por trazer isso nas comunidades, trazer isso para as crianças, e, ao mesmo tempo, na hora que a gente colocar adulto para tentar aprender alguma coisa, a gente precisa ser mais incisivo. A gente precisa trazer resultados concretos do que funciona e mostrar por que aquela cidade que foi feita lá atrás não funciona mais. Algum jeito a gente precisa fazer. Isso a gente pode usar mídia, a gente pode usar vários meios, mas tem a forma que eu vejo é, de certa forma, ser o mais próximo possível dessa população, trazer um linguajar mais fácil e trazer isso de grande mídia, de alguma forma, não usar esses instrumentos. Acho que a audiência pública não funciona, a gente precisa, talvez, ser mais incisivo em canais de televisão, aparecer mais, falar mais. Eu acho que isso, a gente tem esse hábito de falar muito para a gente mesmo, da academia, mas não fala para fora. Então, é um desafio, é uma crítica que eu faço para mim mesmo. É muito fácil vir aqui falar para pessoas que conhecem do tema, mas eu preciso fazer isso para a população, preciso fazer isso para a comunidade, preciso fazer isso mais próximo.
Muito
isso,
bom.
gente.
Vamos encerrar. Super importante, obrigada à mesa, professor Balage, professor Murti, Felipe, aos nossos moderadores, Bruno e debatedora Renata, muito obrigada. Vamos agora para o café, 10 minutos para o café. And then we return to continue this roundtable about hydrological modeling and the challenge of informal settlements. Pode.
Ah, tá.
Se puder falar em inglês, é melhor, porque eles vieram muito longe.
Muito longe. Tá bom. So I would like to invite the participants to the table. Bruna Costa Vieira. Ela é engenheira florestal, mestre em ciências pelo engenheira florestal pela UNB, mestre em ciências pelo ITA, especialista em recursos hídricos pela UNB, aluna de doutorado do ITA e concluiu o estágio em 2024 na Universidade Tecnológica de Hamburgo. Na Alemanha, focado em modelagem hidrológica e soluções baseadas na natureza para adaptação urbana. I'd like to invite also Pedro Algodoal, civil engineer at São Paulo City Hall since 1983. The guest worked at the Urban Infrastructure Department as Director of Drainage Projects and Project Superintendent. He coordinated the Drainage Master Plan and since 2021 has worked as consultant in urban drainage and infrastructure, and also Peter Frohle, civil engineer since 2012, is full professor of hydraulic engineer and head of Institute of River and Coastal Engineering in University of Hamburg. His research interests are coastal and flood protection, river engineering and flood protection, sediment transport and morphologic changes, urban hydrology and urban drainage, climate change related to effects, and numerical simulation methods and measurement, analyze and assessment of hydrological and hydrodynamic data. So, please.
So good morning, everybody. Thanks for introduction, and I put too much on the list for reading that. Good to see you here in this room, and I'm happy to have these discussions here in the room and the exchange of experiences. We are talking about hydrological modeling. We have talked a lot of hydrological modeling already, but we'll go on with that, and with a special focus on the challenge of informal catchments and with data. So we have three inputs here, and Bruna Vieira and myself, we split that a little bit. So I will talk more about data and data requirements of models, and she will talk more about Lajeado catchment and the difficulties she or we were facing when setting up a hydrological model there. So my things will be hydrological modeling, data requirements of hydrological model. I will wrap up hydrological processes and then combine that with the modeling concepts, and then talk about the requirements and to give an idea about working in environments with limited data availability. And I can tell you, in every or for every model setup, you have somewhere limited data availability all around the world, and then draw some conclusions. What are we talking about? The water cycle, the very big picture, the way of the water from the ocean over the atmosphere to the surface, and then from the precipitation, the runoff is formed as surface runoff, or after infiltration as groundwater runoff or interflow. This is the cycle, and this is the big picture, not that complex. This is the big picture with not all the details, but with a lot more details describing the physical processes. Of course, I will not go into detail, and I cannot go into detail, but what we want to do, we model, so make mathematical formulations develop mathematical formulations for all those processes, and then put them together and transform precipitation into runoff on different scales. And the general formulation is very easy. Yeah, precipitation either is discharge, or so precipitation is either discharging or running off, or it is evaporating or transpiration, so evapotranspiration, or it is somehow stored. And these general water balance equations can be applied to all scales, from the very big picture worldwide to large catchments, smaller catchments, and even for green roof or smaller hydrological units, this general balance equation is valid. The processes, we are basically interested in hydrological modeling, so rainfall runoff modeling are shown here. So we need, of course, precipitation, the driver of the discharge, and then we have to translate the precipitation into discharge in rivers. And in between we have several processes. So we have the infiltration process, we have the surface runoff process, we have the interception, and we have interactions, which means interaction with plants, and we have the urban areas. So this is the natural hydrological scale, and if we look at urban areas, with respect to rainfall runoff, we have the stormwater management and the urban drainage, basically stormwater or storm sewers, which collect the water and bring them into the rivers. The other processes are the same as for the natural ones, so the surface runoff, infiltration, etc., etc. So these are the processes we are looking at, and we are looking at in different modeling systems. I will only talk about hydrological modeling, where we have the spatial and temporal distribution of the rainfall, and then calculate the deformation of these processes to get the runoff. The basic output here is discharge in cubic meters per second or liter per second or whatever. If we are interested in how the water moves on the surface, then we are going to hydraulic modeling. So then we have to solve the hydrodynamic equations, and then we get surface runoff and flow velocities, flow heights, etc. And this forms then the basis for flood modeling and, at the end of the day, for risk modeling. Finished? Okay, the water balance equation, again, so we have the storage, we have an input into a storage, we have an output out of the storage, and we have the discharge here flowing to the next thing. That's an approach we are applying for all the processes involved. So a hydrological model is storage-based. So we have different storages, different layers for the vertical processes. Basically the precipitation effects and the infiltration and in the different levels. And for the horizontal outflow. So any of the process is a small storage element, and we'll follow the way of the water from precipitation through the different layers, vertical layers, into the horizontal layers, and then the horizontal outflow. So for example, here we have the surface runoff, here we have the interflow in the unsaturated zone, and here we have the base flow, which is the groundwater outflow in the horizontal area. And this way we have to somehow describe in our model. And coming to scales, hydrological model, of course, we have catchments, but we have catchments of different scales, catchments, sub-catchments, and catchments, until we are reaching the local scale. And we somehow integrate the processes in one of the scales, and with in some models we can also distinguish that partly we have the very local scale and partly we have the mesoscale or the overall catchment scale. Yeah, which are the data requirements? I was talking about the processes and the, let's say, the description of the different processes in storage elements. So we have to define our catchment. Input data will be digital elevation model, river networks, lakes and storages, and of course the sewer system if we are in cities. So that's the catchments. Then we are talking about hydrotopes, which are areas with the same hydrological parameters or similar hydrological, not parameters, behavior. Yeah, they are dependent of the land use, the pedology or geology, special hydrological features. Here we are on the scale of the SATs, which we discussed yesterday and also today. The groundwater is a part of it. Then we have the flood routing, so how does the water change over the course of a river? Of course, then we need information about the river, the channel geometry, roughness, etc. Yeah, the driver, the meteorological information, precipitation is discussed very frequently, but we also need for the evaporation and transpiration, the wind, the temperature, air moisture, sunshine duration, etc. And then we are coming to calibration and verification, and to do this we also need the hydrological information, so runoff and water level within the catchments in order to assess whether or not our model is doing and running well. Yeah, just an example, digital elevation models. In former times we used maps and digitized them. Now we have the digital elevation model up to a scale of 1 by 1 meter. So for Germany we have for the complete country a digital elevation model of 1 by 1 meter, which is amazing. Thinking back 20 years where we had these big maps and then digitizing it, and this is very good. So this is Lajeado examples. The insiders of you saw that directly, and with respect to this digital elevation models, the data is there. Yeah, and then we generate. So this is dark means low-lying, white means high-lying areas, and then you can see from that the main causes of the natural drainage system. So water is flowing basically from white to black, and then here to the point, to the drainage point of the catchment. 5 minutes. Wow. Let's see whether I can make it. Okay, so these are the subcatchment, and within the subcatchment, then we need the information about the river and how is it doing. We have to connect these different layers in the hydrological models with strands, so real strands where the water is flowing, or virtual strands where we have no routing, just passing of waters. Then we have nodes where we calculate the discharge and all the other things, and of course we have sub-catchments. So we define sub-catchments, and within these sub-catchments we have the flow path, and here we have the river system itself connected together with the nodes where the elements are have contact to each other. And then we have the net elements, and the net relation means how the water is flowing from A to B. So we have to define a source and a sink of the water within these hydrological models. So this was for the catchment. For the precipitation, we were discussing also yesterday, and I will the data information itself, but also the temporal and spatial resolution of data. And we found a very good example for a storm water event in Hamburg. So don't be confused. This is the border of Hamburg, the city of Hamburg, and this is radar measurements. Radar measurements with a resolution of 1 by 1 kilometer over Hamburg, and this is our main hydrological station at the airport, Fuhlsbüttel. There we have data for 70, 80 years, which we normally use. And this is an event in 2004 where we had flooding in many parts of Hamburg. And the gauge at Fuhlsbüttel measured 0.7 millimeter daily precipitation. Yeah? And I show you the course of this event in 5 minutes. Yeah? So we start at noontime, and then you see, okay, we have here very high precipitation, red means high, and it's going all over Hamburg from west to east. And then you think, okay, now the rain is starting here, and then, nope. And this is a really, really funny thing. I love this, so I show that to everybody who wants to know or don't want to know. Yeah. So we need the spatial distribution for that, and with the, let's say, very important gauge network with this point-wise measurements, we most probably cannot model the very local, in our case, very local high precipitation events. So we need this radar information, which has some shortcomings, but I don't want to discuss this. So that's what we urgently need. And then the river, and with the river I will then go to, what can we do in environments with limited data availability. This is the basic thing. So we need information about cross sections, so profiles of our river or channel here. We need information about pipes, pipe systems. We need the surface, the roughness. That's something we can measure, go into the field, measure everything, and then we have the data. What do we do if we don't have this information? Then we rely on photographs or Google Earth. So this is Lajeado catchment, and the same problem. You see this comparatively huge cross section for the water, and then here, there is an obstacle. And what will the water do with this obstacle? Everybody in the room knows. But this is not only the case here, so you also find it here. This is an example from Hamburg. It's the same. We have a big cross section, water is coming, and then we have a small pipe, and poor water has to go through this small pipe. What will it do? It will look for easier ways to go, and then will go and flood the area. So many problems are man-made here. Okay, deriving values, take a photo, and then somehow draw the cross-section, and then assess the height of the car, the height of people, and then try to have the cross-section. Or here it's Google. This is Google Earth. You can also try to get the information of the width and the height from Google Earth up to with a certain accuracy, and then measure the distance between 2 points and then somehow get the information of that, because of course measurements are very expensive. Yes, that's all I wanted to, not all I wanted to say. I want to draw some conclusions. So I hope that I could make clear that hydrological modeling is very data intensive for catchment definition, for hydrotopes, groundwater information. We didn't talk about that in detail, but this is, at least in Germany, very frequently a big issue to get the groundwater information. The flood routing, so how is the river moving in, the water moving in the water, meteorological information on the different temporal and hydrological, the temporal and spatial scales, and of course hydrological information, water levels. Yeah, normally we don't have all data available. We can do additional measurements, go into the field, which is time consuming and expensive. We have a project which we are doing together with the federal state of Schleswig-Holstein, where we are waiting for 7 months for the survey information within the catchment. So 7 months, yeah, waiting. Or we can guess, based on available information, some best guess assumptions which are, I would say, better than nothing. Nevertheless, we need a certain minimum of data which is absolutely necessary. So we need information about the meteorology, with adapted temporal and spatial resolution. So if we want to have work on local scale, then we need really high resolution precipitation information. We need, of course, digital elevation model and the discharge system itself. Yeah, the soil and infiltration is very important, not in the Lajeado area where everything is sealed. And then for calibration, some information about water levels and discharges. Coming back to the modeling, so the hydrological models are very good tools, but we heard it earlier today, but I will repeat it. Yeah, the models are only as good as the input information. And to bring it to a point, if you put rubbish in, you get rubbish out. Yeah, thanks for your attention. Okay, I give back to the moderator.
Please, Bruna, could you come?
Of course. Yes. Just waiting for an invitation.
Okay, good morning everyone. My name is Bruna, and actually before I begin my presentation, I would like to take this moment just to say thanks to all the SP meeting team, and especially thanks to Professor Ana Paula Curi, who kindly invited me to be part here of this event. So it's such a great opportunity to be here, to participate and share some ideas and knowledge with all of you guys. So regarding the theme of our panel, which addresses the definition of parameters for hydrological modeling in informal catchment, today I will present to you, just complementing the presentation that Professor Peter Foley just did, I will present to you the challenges that I encounter while setting up Calypso hydrology model to perform the hydrological modeling in Lajeado's catchment that is located in Itaí Paulista here in São Paulo. So my research actually was made possible thanks to ITA, where I take my PhD course, to CAPS, that is the foundation that finances my studies, and also the Hamburg University of Technology, where I had the privilege of doing a supervised internship last year and the beginning of this year, and also the team of Itaí Paulista. Okay, so just, well, to give a brief background, very brief, I'm a forestry engineer, and I'm a PhD student at ITA. And I'm working in my thesis with a theme of ecosystem service in urban environment with elements for nature-based adaptation. So my research basically lies on the application of nature-based solution as measures to address the impacts of climate change here in Brazil, and actually to try to work with nature-based solution as a tool for building sustainable and resilient cities. So in 2023, last year, I had the joy of meeting Professor Ana Paula, and then I began a partnership with Itaí Paulista team to study the Lajeado catchment as the study area for my thesis. And also last year, I received a scholarship from the CAPS Sprint program, and I had the opportunity to spend 6 months as a guest researcher at the Institute of River and Coastal Engineering in the Hamburg University of Technology, there in Germany. And there at the institute, I learned about the use of the software, the Calypso hydrology software, and I developed, this software was developed by them, it's important to point that. And also, I tried to carry out the hydrological model of the Lajeado catchment using the Calypso hydrology. So when we talk about informal catchments, informal settlements, slums, favelas, peripheral areas, whatever term we want to use, it's essential to keep in mind that the residents of these areas are highly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. We can say that they are disproportionately affected by the effects of climate change. So sometimes the lack of an adequate drainage and also sanitation system can increase by much the vulnerability of these communities to all these water-related disasters, as these informal areas, they are often associated with floodplains. They are also constructed near streams or hills, which makes that these communities end up being exposed to flooding and also to landslide risks. So floods, they usually in literature, they are addressed as the concept, they are based on the concept of surface runoff and the soil infiltration capacity. But such approaches, they require an extensive amount of data and also technical analysis capacity, which are often unavailable or limited. So thus, there's a shortage of case studies. They are reported actually in literature that support the understanding of the effective flood risk management in these particular areas. So here, I don't know if... So this is just a video to show one of the flooding events that we had in 2020 in the Lajeado catchment. Just to give a brief idea of the problem that they currently face. Oh, sorry. Okay. So here you can see a map of our study area, that is the Lajeado catchment, that is located in the eastern part of the city of São Paulo. And the Lajeado catchment, we can say that it's a micro catchment because it has approximately 11 square kilometers, and where the main stream, the main stream is the Lajeado stream, and it is approximately 7 kilometers long from here, the upstream to the outlet, approximately 7 kilometers long. And this catchment, it has already more than 90% of its surface that it's already impervious. Impervious, impermeable, I don't know the correct term. And here in the Lajeado catchment, there's a high concentration of precarious settlements. They are located in risky areas. So it's an area with a high social vulnerability, which suffers, as I showed you guys with the video, they suffer from frequent flooding events. So here are some photos of the Lajeado stream. Actually, these photos were taken August last year during a field trip, and where it's possible to observe the different profiles of the stream in different points along the catchment. So in some stretches, the stream still runs in its natural bed, as we can see, sometimes in some places. But basically, most of the area, we can see that it has already been channelized. The stream has already been channelized in most part. And it's also possible to see here in these pictures the stretches where the emergency works. Here, the emergency works were built by the state government to try to reduce the effects of flooding for the community that lives nearby the stream. So here I'll be very brief because Professor Frolle already gave a lot of information regarding the Calypso hydrology requirement regarding data. But just to talk a little bit again about this, the model of Calypso hydrology, here are the requirements, so we can see that we need a lot, as Professor Frolle just said, it's a lot of data-intensive requirement. We need a lot of data. We need a lot of geographic data, shape files of geology, pedology. We need topography information. We need meteorological information to set up the model. And we also need detailed information regarding the river geometry and all this roughness, very detailed information for all the characteristics of the streams. So I just briefly told you about all the data that I need. You saw it's a lot. But now I'm going to talk to you about some, not all of them, but some of the challenges that I face at this stage of setting up the model. So the first difficulty that came up was when I was searching for information regarding the watershed, the catchment topography. Actually, the government, I think this was mentioned in yesterday's panel, but the government of the city of São Paulo, they hold a platform that is called GeoSampa, where it's possible to analyze and also download a lot of geographic data from the city of São Paulo. So GeoSampa has a very rich and a very detailed database, and it was possible for me actually to download the digital elevation model that was obtained from LiDAR data. I think this was mentioned in the previous panel. The LiDAR data are very excellent data to work with good spatial resolution. However, not everything is just good news. However, this is just a cut-off image of GeoSampa platform, and this is the Lajeado catchment. But as you can see here, the most upstream section, the most extreme part of the Lajeado catchment is located outside the city of São Paulo. It's located in the city of Ferraz de Vasconcelos. What makes that it's not covered by GeoSampa data, unfortunately. So for me, it was necessary to look for shape files in other databases because unfortunately, the LiDAR data, very good data, was not available for the entire catchment. Also, when we talk about... No. How do I jump this way? How do I jump?
No, go up. This is not work.
Oh, you can see very fast.
Yes.
Can just a quick.
Okay, tomorrow
How
I
can?
have a visit.
Yeah. How can
Maybe,
I?
maybe do that. Let's see.
Let's
No.
see, yeah. Okay, good, thank you. So here, when we actually when we talk about urban drainage in informal settlements, the sewage system or the lack of a sewage system ends up playing a central role in the story. So in the case of the Lajeado catchment, several of the houses are not connected to the sewage system, as you can see here in these pictures. So as occur in many peripheral areas, much of the sewage is released into the stream without any treatment, which directly impact both the quality and also the quantity of water in the stream. And in Calypso hydrology model, the delimitation of the subcatchments, they are based both in the topography and also the sewage system. But in my case, while I was setting up the model, I just did the definition made by the DEM, the digital elevation model, since no data on sewage was found in this case. So also, as Professor Frola mentioned in the previous presentation, Calypso hydrology model, we work in a hydrotope level base. There are surfaces with similar hydrological characteristics, and the hydrotopes, they are made by overlapping layers. So one of the layers that made up the hydrotopes are the soil layer. But for Calypso hydrology, it is necessary to import information about the physical hydraulic parameters of each of the soil horizons presented in the area. So we need information about field capacity, wilting point, porosity, hydraulic conductivity. So unfortunately, in the case of the Lajeado catchment, we didn't have specific field data for the soil. So what I did, and I believe most of people working with models do, we have to use parameters that are estimated based on soil that are nearby, as we can say. But these estimations sometimes end up increasing the degree of uncertainty that is associated with the modeling. And regarding the other layer of the hydrotopes, geology, we also it's necessary to input information about the groundwater. I think this is a challenge for everywhere. It's a problem because we must specify the values that are related, for example, to the thickness of the aquifer and all the flow of the groundwater that percolates. So we usually don't have enough information regarding what happens underground regarding the water. So in this case, also, since we didn't have like experimental tests conducting for the groundwater, I did, as I did with the soil data, I estimated some geology parameters based on geology data from nearby locations. Also, this actually, as Professor Frola mentioned, this step was the most complicated one because actually it was necessary to include information about the geometry of the channels. And this was the most complicated point and that required the most research. So to find information about the geometry of the Lajeado catchment and also the tributaries that we have, I had to consult a lot of different papers, some dissertations and some works, some studies that were carried out by Labitaim members. As here you can see a picture of some of the dissertation masters. Also, I used some QGIS tools to try to infer the channel geometry with high resolution images. So I had to face all try to look in all to these different databases to try to get the right information. But fortunately, in August of this year, the Infrastructure of Public Works Secretary, the CIURB, here in São Paulo, together with the FCTH, the Hydraulics Technological Center Foundation, August this year, they published the drainage report of this catchment. So this was very fortunate. And with this drainage report in hand, it was also possible to obtain more detailed information about the geometry of the stream. And also, it was good to compare to the values that I already had in the other studies. So the last one, regarding hydrologic information, this was mentioned in all the previous presentations regarding modeling. Doesn't matter which model, but regarding the hydrological information, we need to know, we need information regarding the river flow, and it's necessary to calibrate the model that we are working with. That is, we need to adjust it so the simulation that is generated is as close to reality as possible. But therefore, it's very important to have information that is collected in the field. So this we can verify the accuracy of the model that we are working with. In the case of the Lajeado stream, there are two fluviometric stations here. They are held by SAISP, the São Paulo, the flood alert system for São Paulo. And they are located here, almost near the outlet. Here is the outlet of the catchment. So these are the two fluviometric stations. But unfortunately, these the fluviometric stations, they do not measure the discharge. They record the variation of the water level. I think it's most common. But to estimate, to estimate the stream flow and the discharge at this point, I requested for the FCTH, the FCTH, I requested some key curves here to try to estimate the flow information, the discharge information based on the water level information. So here, this is the main objective of my presentation, I believe. Based on all of these examples that I did, just some of the examples that I just presented, it's possible to reflect on these challenges that we have in defining these parameters regarding hydrological modeling when we are working in favelas and peripheral areas. So many of the challenges, I believe, they are centered on the availability of data. Because I think often the data does not exist with the level of detail that is required for the model. And also, there are also challenges that are related to the quality of this data that we work with. Because since the data is sometimes available, there's also data that are incomplete, inconsistent, and also a lot of data that does not have metadata. That is, we do not have information about how the data was collected, what's the source, when it was collected, how it was collected. So all of this ends up making it difficult to establish some reliable parameters for our modeling. And in addition, informal settlements, they present, as it was said in the previous, the last panel, informal settlements, they present dynamic conditions. So they are constantly evolving, they are constantly changing with new structures being built, and a lot of changes occurring in the level of land use. So this requires continuous monitoring and updating of all this data that we're working with this modeling. So in the absence of a unified database, all these data that are relevant for modeling, they are usually scattered across a lot of different government agencies, NGOs, local organizations, academia. So this makes it difficult to access and sometimes to integrate this database. So often we have data, but sometimes it's conflicting data. So it makes it difficult to know actually what is the most reliable source to work with while we are modeling. But, so with these challenges in mind, these are just, I think, I would like to point out some of the suggestions that I put just to try to reduce the uncertainties, because we know while we are working with models, we are working with uncertainty, of course, but to try to sometimes reduce that. So first we had the remote sensing, so working with satellite imagery. This can provide valuable spatial data that can also complement, cannot substitute, but can complement the information that we get in the ground level information. Also, a comprehensive data collection, because it's important to establish a systematic approach together and to maintain this up-to-date database based on the physical, social, and also the environmental characteristic of the favela, the peripheral settlements. It's important to ensure that the continuous monitoring of the area will be, this will be enabled the creation of climate adaptation measure that will be appropriate to the context. So we need to have field data. Also a centralized database, so if we establish a centralized interoperable database to consolidate and manage this data from very different sources, this can improve the accessibility and also the integration. We should promote this cross-sectoral collaboration and this data sharing among all the government agencies, research institutions, and also community stakeholders. So the last, but for me, the most important one is this community-centric strategies. Because I think collaborating with local residents and organizations can help gather this first knowledge and informal settlement characteristics. And also we should engage with local residents to ensure that the hydrological modeling that we are performing and also the water management solutions, they will address the needs and the challenges that are really faced by the community. So actually this, just to point a little comment, I was reading some papers and I read a very interesting one in Thailand where they was conducting some work regarding nature-based solutions. They were doing some research about modeling and which type of nature-based solution would be the most effective for the area, rain gardens or swales and everything. But in some point during the research, they decided to do some survey with the community, some interviews with all the members, and they discovered that actually with all the NBS, the nature-based solution portfolio, actually the community wanted community gardens. They thought it was a nature-based solution option that the technical team was not even considering, but for the community they said no, for us it's important to have a community garden because of the relationships that we have with our neighbors and everything. So it has to be a combined work. The technical team has to rely on the knowledge and it has to, I think the community has to participate not only in the approval of the solutions, but they have to come up with the mapping of the problem. I believe that sometimes we say, okay, so this is a problem for you, here, see this solution, what do you think about it? But sometimes if they participate during, since the beginning of the mapping of the problem, if they know the problem, they participate in the discussions among what is interesting to do, what is possible to do, then they will have the knowledge, they will have the interest, and they will appropriate. So it was not something that was, it will not be given to them, it was something that was constructed with them. So from my perspective, this is the main key. Communication actually is key. So this is just a final thought that I put, because I think addressing the complex challenges in defining all these hydrological modeling parameters in case of favelas and informal settlements, these require this multifaceted approach, and we have to combine robust data collection, so we have to work on that still, not only in Brazil, I know in India and all over, but here in the Global South, we have to really engage in this database collections and integration. Collaborative frameworks among agencies, and also community-driven solutions. So I think by embracing these strategies, we can really work toward more resilient and sustainable water management in all these very dynamic urban environments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruna, very much. And I would like now to invite Pedro Godoal. How do you do to? Control L. That's it. Bom dia a todos. Eu peço desculpas por falar em português, mas eu fico um pouco mais à vontade assim. E eu tenho muito orgulho em vir aqui trazer aqui a nossa publicação do Caderno do Lajeado. É um trabalho que a Prefeitura faz já, a gente já está com 2 dezenas de cadernos e a Prefeitura tem avançado no planejamento das ações para o controle de cheias de São Paulo, né? E a gente tem um plano de drenagem, o caderno faz parte de um plano que tem esses 2 módulos. No primeiro módulo, você tem as ações institucionais e mesmo o manual de drenagem, que também já está publicado. E no módulo 2 estão os cadernos de bacia e as ações. Estão os cadernos de bacia e as ações aqui que colaboram com o planejamento, inclusive, das obras de controle de cheias da cidade. Mas isso não foi sempre assim. A cidade foi construída dentro de uma concepção de soluções pontuais. Então, a solução, principalmente a viária, era preponderante sobre a solução de drenagem. Então, se pensava em fazer uma avenida no fundo de vale, como, por exemplo, a 9 de Julho, que ocupa o Vale do Saracura. Então, eram pensadas soluções pontuais e predominantemente viárias. Um marco que foi para a cidade foi a construção do reservatório do Pacaembu. Aqui é o estádio do Pacaembu. Ele foi construído aqui na frente do estádio. Hoje a gente não vê porque ele é subterrâneo, mas antes dele a gente tinha inundações bem severas em toda a Avenida do Pacaembu. E o principal ganho, a meu ver, para a drenagem, além dos benefícios da obra em si, foi que, para você dimensionar um reservatório desse tipo, você tem que pensar na bacia, você tem que fazer um planejamento da bacia. Ele é uma intervenção que é feita aqui, na cabeceira da bacia, e que ele traz benefício para jusante, ao contrário de uma canalização que era pensada pontualmente. Isso deu origem ao plano diretor de drenagem do governo do Estado, que a gente chama de PDMAT, e ele foi um grande ganho para a cidade. A prefeitura participou também desse PDMAT, e eu dou como exemplo aqui a bacia do Aricanduva. O PDMAT propôs um conjunto de reservatórios, um deles linear ao longo do canal do Aricanduva, e todos esses verdes já foram implantados. Os cor de laranja estão em implantação e a gente ainda tem um conjunto para uma terceira etapa para a gente chegar até a dar uma proteção para a bacia de 100 anos. É claro que com as mudanças climáticas as chuvas têm se intensificado e no caderno foi feita uma revisão nesse esquema, mas essa bacia já recebeu bastante benefício por ter sido planejada e terem essas ações planejadas. Então, os cadernos são esses daqui. Temos alguns produtos principais que a gente pode destacar. O diagnóstico, que é feito com base na modelagem da bacia e feita uma completa caracterização física e urbanística para chegar nas manchas de inundação, que é o principal diagnóstico, e daí a gente, a partir dessas manchas de inundação, vamos propor alternativas para minimizar
esses eventos e essas cheias. Tá? O caderno, ele tem uma das qualidades dele é chegar até os custos dessas intervenções e, desse jeito, dá instrumento para a prefeitura para fazer um planejamento realmente de ações para o controle de cheias. E a gente tem avançado bastante nisso. E não é deixado de lado as ações complementares que a gente está iniciando, né, a proposta de zoneamento de áreas inundáveis, ou seja, estabelecer para as áreas inundáveis medidas para as edificações se protegerem dessas cheias. Então, além de ter uma área para passagem de cheia, a área central, que qualquer edificação causa um efeito de barramento dessa cheia, para a área de convivência com a cheia, são estabelecidas cotas de cheia. Para essas cotas, as entradas das edificações ficarem acima das cotas de cheia. Não aconteceu que tem acontecido ainda subsolos que são inundados porque eles estão com a entrada abaixo da cota de cheia, então a gente tem que já fornece esse tipo de dado para as construções, então no sentido de dar mais resiliência da cidade às cheias, porque a gente sabe que a gente não vai conseguir fazer todas as obras hidráulicas que precisam para a gente ter uma segurança para 100 anos. Então, contando com isso, a gente tem que garantir uma resiliência para essas áreas que ainda estão em risco de cheia. Na verdade, o que a gente trabalha? Nós temos uma condição natural, a bacia vegetada é permeável, que tem uma função para a drenagem de infiltração. A intervenção artificial que substitui a bacia vegetada e permeável são as lides, são os jardins de chuva, telhados verdes e tal. Então, a gente procura, com uma intervenção, substituir uma função natural da bacia. Da mesma forma, a várzea inundável ela tem uma função principal de reservação. Então, a gente, na cidade, a gente procura substituir essa função natural por reservatórios, que é uma solução chamada cinza, os parques lineares com área verde inundável e as lagoas de retenção, que a gente tem até alguns exemplos, como o lago do Parque da Aclimação, que ele funciona, ele tem dispositivos que retêm ali 30 mil metros cúbicos de volume de água pela variação de nível, essa variação é controlada pela estrutura de vertimento desse lago, e então ele funciona, não parece um reservatório, mas ele tem um desempenho hidráulico como se fosse um reservatório. O leito natural ele tem a função de escoamento das águas, né? Bem resumidamente, a gente sabe que tem outras funções. E a gente tem propostas de canalizações convencionais ou, onde é possível, fazer uma requalificação do leito. Já temos algumas propostas nesse sentido também. Então, aqui é a gama de soluções que a gente dispõe. Então, nós temos aqui as lides, são pisos permeáveis, são pequenas detenções, áreas de infiltração, como jardim de chuva. Aqui temos um reservatório convencional, que é feito aqui sob uma praça. Esse daqui fica na frente do Tribunal de Contas do município, perto da 23 de maio. Tá? Então, ele é um poço bem profundo, sobre ele vai ser reconstituída a praça. E aqui uma outra solução, que também funciona como reservatório, Esse lago aqui é o lago do Parque de Toronto, cidade de Toronto, ali na chegada da Bandeirantes, da rodovia dos Bandeirantes. E vocês veem que ele tem esse nível aqui, é o nível de vazante, e você tem essa rampa aqui, no topo da rampa, ele verte. Ou seja, você tem toda a área do lago, por essa altura aqui, uma área de retenção no próprio lago. A aclimação que eu mencionei, ele funciona também dessa forma. Bom, vamos passar para a bacia do Lajeado, propriamente. Essa daqui é a bacia. Na verdade, o caderno pega também a bacia do Água Vermelha e um córrego menor aqui, que a gente chama de São Martinho. Tá? Mas a bacia maior aqui é do Lajeado. E aqui é a mancha de inundação para 100 anos. Vou correr. A mancha de inundação para 100 anos, para uma cheia na bacia. E vocês veem a situação se o nível do Tietê está alto. Então, toda essa várzea aqui, ela fica bem comprometida por essa cheia, principalmente a conjunta da bacia com a cheia do rio Tietê. Então, e a gente pode ver aqui assim, duas áreas bem distintas para estudo, que é a bacia, onde a gente prioriza ações de retenção, para comprometer menos a várzea, que aí a gente tem que adotar um outro tipo de solução. E o Jardim Pantanal é uma área central e infelizmente famosa, porque a gente chega a ter essa cheia, às vezes dias que o Tietê fica cheio e essa área fica toda cheia. Na verdade, é uma área que não devia ter sido ocupada, ela fazia parte do plano de várzeas do Tietê, do Parque do Tietê, mas a ocupação foi intensa e hoje a gente tem uma situação bem crítica. Qual foi a referência que foi usada para solucionar essa várzea? Nós temos um caderno anterior, que é o caderno da Vila Leopoldina, que pega a área de várzea do CEAGESP, que a gente vê aqui todo ano as melancias boiando na inundação. Então, a situação da cheia local e a cheia do Pinheiros, daí a questão do rio Pinheiros cheio. E o que foi proposto para essa bacia? Basicamente, a gente tem poucos eventos de transbordamento do Pinheiros, mas a gente tem muitos eventos de refluxo das galerias, que levam as águas do Pinheiros para dentro. Então, a ideia é fazer um dique aqui, fazer uma ciclovia um pouco mais elevada, acima da cota de cheia, e o esquema funcionaria dessa forma. Então, hoje, a situação tem locais nessa bacia que o nível de vazante do Pinheiros chega, então essas galerias ficam afogadas, às vezes uma lâmina d'água permanente no ano inteiro. É um absurdo. Aqui, então, o que acontece? Esse é o evento mais comum. Você tem a cheia do Pinheiros e a água volta e inunda o CEAGESP. A primeira medida proposta no caderno é a instalação de válvulas, que, para essa situação, ela atende. Porém, você tendo uma chuva local, essa água não tem para onde ir. Então, essas válvulas são associadas a reservatórios, tá, para receber essa chuva local. Agora, se a gente tem uma chuva, o transbordamento do rio foi aquilo que eu mencionei inicialmente, então foi proposta também a ciclovia elevada, de modo que você consegue conter a cheia do Pinheiros e a chuva local. Tá? No caso do Tietê, nós temos uma proposta, uma concepção original do DAE, que é o Parque Várzeas do Tietê. Ele tinha esse conjunto aqui, que seria o barramento, o dique, né? Com ciclovia, até uma pista, e um canal de circunvalação para receber as águas locais e conduzir para um reservatório. Né? Então, se a gente tem uma situação hoje dessa forma, e a gente pega aqui, então, a concepção original era baseada na construção de um dique em toda a margem do rio Tietê, tá? Associado a reservatórios e drenagens internas das áreas. Então, o objetivo, a situação hoje é essa, e você colocando esse sistema, a gente considera, vocês veem a situação, a proteção que se pretende para essa área baixa. Então, o caderno, dentro dessas concepções, dessas ideias, ele adotou a construção a gente chamamos de polder, esse conjunto do reservatório, do dique e dos sistemas de drenagem interna. E, para as cabeceiras, um conjunto de reservatórios e de canalizações também para remover os obstáculos que tem ao escoamento. Nessa região tem muitas ocupações, muitas favelas, que também restringem o escoamento, exigindo, inclusive, algumas obras de emergência que foram feitas até antes do caderno. Aqui nós temos, sempre nos cadernos, são propostas obras mais hidráulicas na alternativa 1, e na alternativa 2, algumas alternativas de retenção em áreas verdes. E aqui, só para ilustrar, o caderno apresenta também todas as vazões e resultantes dessas duas alternativas. Então, tem esse hidrograma que demonstra as soluções propostas. E um exemplo prático que a gente tem de aplicação dessas medidas é na comunidade do Torresmo, uma comunidade que ocupou essa margem aqui, mas uma ação em conjunto com a SEAB e as subprefeituras. Essa comunidade vai ser removida, já está em processo de remoção, e para a gente construir um reservatório aqui, porque nós temos canalizações que foram feitas aqui em obras de emergência, como a Bruna mostrou, só que as cheias, essas obras se complementam com os reservatórios propostos. Então, isso já está em curso, e aqui em conversas com a professora Ana Paula também, temos uma área aqui desse conjunto habitacional, uma área esportiva, onde pretendemos implantar áreas de retenção, né? Seriam soluções que se complementam. Aqui é um exemplo do reservatório, o projeto do reservatório já está em andamento, ele vai ocupar essa parte aqui. Tá? E no Jardim Pantanal, nós estamos também nos estudos iniciais, e a ideia é de construir um dique, agora dessa forma, que é um dique que já foi construído em um bairro próximo, na Vila Itaim. Só que a gente depara com uma situação aqui que a ocupação chegou na margem do rio. Aonde a gente vai colocar esse sistema? Tá? Então, aqui é um estudo de titularidade das áreas, né? Então, a gente teria que remover toda essa faixa aqui para proteger com o dique o Jardim Pantanal. Tem uma série de ações aqui, a Lana também participa de atividades aqui para regularização fundiária dessa população, e a gente tem mantido esses contatos todos. Então, o que a gente faz? A gente remove, Surgiu também uma proposta alternativa, que seria fazer um desvio do próprio Tietê e fazer o dique mais afastado para você evitar as remoções. Isso ainda está em estudo. Tá? Se a gente faz uma remoção mais intensa ou se a gente faz um desvio, que vai ser uma obra ambientalmente complexa para a gente fazer licenciamento e tudo. E, por fim, uma proposta do caderno. Aqui a gente tem o Jardim Helena, que é uma área inundável, e aqui toda a área do Pantanal. E aqui a gente tem o córrego São Martinho, que ele é uma das partes mais críticas desse projeto, porque ele chega muito fundo e bem no meio do dique. Então, como fazer? A ideia seria fazer um reservatório convencional nessa porção aqui, que não está representado, e nessa parte aqui, até como um limite para o avanço dessa ocupação, fazer uma chamada lagoa de biorretenção, que ela tem a função de receber as águas internas, né, da microdrenagem dessa região, e conduzir para o reservatório, que aqui vai ter aqui a parte bonita, mas tem a parte assim, mais prática, que é um reservatório de concreto, com sistema de bombeamento e tal. Tá? Mas eu acho que é importante até para integrar a comunidade. Ela sabe que se ela jogar o lixo aqui, ele vai aparecer na lagoa. Então, eu acho que ele permite uma série de atividades, além de proporcionar uma melhoria da qualidade da água, né? Então, essa aqui é a proposta em planta, aqui seria o reservatório, e aqui seria essa lagoa. Essa área aqui é um parque muito bem aproveitado pela população, e é interessante que eles assimilaram a ideia de ser um parque inundável. Então, ele fica inundável, mas, mesmo assim, eles convivem com isso e utilizam a área de uma forma muito, muito interessante, muito boa. Tá? Então, era isso. Então, obrigado.
Thank you, Pedro. Now I would like to invite all the participants to our debate. At 2, okay. Pedro? Pedro. So it's nice because I'm an architect, so I'm learning a lot about hydrological modeling, and I try to think about the logics that you presented, and the presentations were really excellent to bring some questions. I will I have 2 questions, and I think it would be even better to open to the audience to bring other questions. So the question I was thinking about was, like, it is clear that we have to face somehow the lack of data to hydrological modeling, but taking Bruno's words that said mentioned some ways to reduce the uncertainty. I would ask if, in conceptual terms, it would not be the opposite, in the sense that the absence of data could compose or to put us in a situation to bring a more real territorial knowledge, since it encourages us to looking at the site-specific situation. and also incorporating community positions like you mentioned. So to understand that the hydrologic modeling, not of course, if you have informations like in São Paulo, but if you don't have somehow, isn't it a good perspective of the modeling process in terms of bringing the uncertainty to this the construction of this knowledge? And the other question, it would be something like in the absence of the institutional hydrological data, is there any perspective regarding to the IoT, Internet of the Things, with sensors and other kind of things, especially having the climate transition as an uncertainty scenario?
Thank you so much for your insights and your provocative comments, actually, because, well, regarding the first one that you thought about the uncertainties that we have regarding hydrological modeling, I think all kinds of modeling, there's like you said, there's an interesting point related when we start of the hydrological modeling of, for example, an informal catchment, because when we start to work with the catchment, then we realize that we don't have data. So how can we plan and how do we want to design solutions for an area that we know nothing about? So just an example. This is a good thing not to have data, because it gives us like a reason to do more field work and do more integrated work alongside with the government, the institutions, and all the stakeholders, the community, as I said, to try to gather this database. My whole presentation, I wanted to really focus on this point, because it's very hard to have, here in the global south, here in Brazil, but I think in a lot of places, it's very hard to have a really reliable database that we can trust. And the complex part is that it has to be updated constantly. So sometimes we don't have the staff. We had the problem that I think was discussed in the panels of yesterday panels, that sometimes it's very related to the government. So whenever we change the people in the agencies and everything, we lose some information, some important information that goes along with the people. So from this part, I think the good point, just to observe, the good point of not having data, because it gives us reasons to research the area. So I think this is a good point. But the other one, since we get these models, outputs, and these results, these beautiful, colorful graphics and everything that we presented here, and this will help the stakeholders to decision makers to make decisions. So it's important that the data is reliable. Otherwise, we'll plan and design, redesign, make a lot of changes, impact a lot of people's lives. And we know there's uncertainty, but it's our job to make sure that the uncertainty is as minimal as possible.
Only one additional comment, because we internally discussed that already after the last session. It's very hard to communicate in terms of uncertainty. So we all more or less understand the term uncertainty or variability or so, but if you go to a decision maker, it's very hard, so they understand it maybe this way or maybe that way, and it's very hard to communicate that uncertainty and how to deal with the uncertainty.
Now, Please, the microphone is here. With Pedro, no. I just would like to ask you to have a brief answer, because we have, I don't know if we have, no? Now it's okay. Okay, no problem. So you're free. Because from translation, now I think it's okay. So you have as much as you want in terms of time.
Let's do a round of questions. Marian, Jonathan, and Renata. Okay, and then.
Thank you very much. Very interesting talks and insights. I'll keep my questions concise and short. First question, Bruna, for you. The challenges you went through possibly are common challenges in any informal settlements or any area without data that the hydrological modeling builds on that. Has this been documented, the challenges you went through and how you tackled them? Has this been documented, possibly for replication? That's the first question. My third question is that maybe, I don't know, any consideration moving forward for continuity in the future. 100% agree with you. The possibility of incorporating citizen science maybe into this, based on some volunteers, engaging more communities. The question about uncertainty, very interesting point. It would be good to know the level of confidence that exists around the model, whatever the stage you are. That level of uncertainty would determine, or confidence or robustness determines what kind of application it is more suitable to. There is a say that perfection is the enemy of completion. We are dealing with a real life situation. For certain level of, you don't need a super precise model. For certain application, a level of confidence, a level of compromise is acceptable. It would be good to know that. And also, the question, or maybe a comment for the last speaker, Pedro. We visited this site last year when we came here. Very interesting points you made. It would be interesting to later, we can take it offline, to know about the latest progress on that and the paradigm shift, how you incorporated that into the community. And for moving forward in the future, it would be interesting to know what cultural changes are going to be in place in order to make sure the solution you offered here is fit for purpose and it will be able to deliver.
Speak em português. Excelentes apresentações, vocês. São duas perguntas bem concisas. Boa parte das apresentações, uma iniciou falando um pouco sobre o processo da modelagem hidrológica, como seria o modelo Calypso, vocês utilizaram. Depois você avançou um pouco mais, falando da aplicação aqui em São Paulo, e o colega complementou também com alguns trabalhos dos cadernos, né, que se utilizam também da modelagem hidrológica e dinâmica. Aí uma questão é se vocês não pensaram em alguma forma que, de forma unânime, foi colocado a ausência de dados, né? Falta-se muito dados para a modelagem. Se vocês não pensaram em uma forma de alguma maneira de minimizar isso, né? Iniciar como foi falado na palestra anterior, trabalhar com umas primeiras medidas, tentando definir uma bacia representativa, que seria a bacia que vocês estão trabalhando, iniciar esse processo, até por meio também da prefeitura, né, das ações do governo, porque só com as estimativas do satélite, que foi o que vocês utilizaram, tem uma incerteza. A gente precisa, né, a força do dado. Então, se tem essa ideia de começar a trabalhar com isso. E eu fiquei com curiosidade também em saber os dados meteorológicos que vocês utilizaram para trabalhar no seu estudo de caso, né? Você acho que estimou talvez precipitação por satélite, mas os outros dados, o que você utilizou para poder complementar a sua modelagem e a estimativa ali também do modelo digital de elevação, que é a alma na parte de modelagem urbana, né? Como é que você fez para estimar a ausência ali do modelo digital de elevação? Seriam essas duas perguntas.
wanted to compliment that the presentation by Bruna for the insights given. That complements the answer which I was looking for. But I wanted to say, highlight here that if we are planning something, planning is a political process. It's not just a technological process. I just wanted to give that comment. And if we are planning, then whether we have ranking of models, whether it's a highly reliable like orange, green, or red, if it's not reliable model because data sets are weak, it makes no sense for planning purposes. So, and when you call other data sets at not reliable, so what is reliable, what is not reliable is a big question, and for whom? And when you are planning something, it's a political process, don't forget that. And I think you highlighted some of these because planning is a political process, it's not just a technology process, it involves people and processes, and these models need to be refined based on the confidence levels. It's not just a technology. I just wanted to compliment you on. Thank you very much.
Bom, eu tenho duas perguntas, uma bem simples, que é com relação à escolha do modelo Calypso, em relação a outros modelos também abertos, né? Porque, por exemplo, quando você mostrou um aspecto de dificuldade de obtenção de dados, que é a questão do solo, né? Tem outros modelos que você poderia entrar com informação do CN e seriam mais simplificados. Então, um pouco nessa escolha de por que um e não outro, ou quais as vantagens do Calypso em relação a outros que já são abertos, isso eu fiquei um pouco em dúvida. E a segunda questão, eu fiquei muito contente aqui com a apresentação do Pedro, quando traz a informação de um nível de planejamento acima, que é o PDMAT, né? Que acho que responde um pouco alguns questionamentos que eu fiz ontem, acabei fazendo hoje, que é exatamente essa conexão entre um plano de uma escala maior, um entendimento regional, e a transição desse entendimento regional depois para o trabalho com as escalas locais, com os planos de bacia, né? Então, o conceito da vazão de restrição, que aí você tem um volume a ser trabalhado dentro daquela bacia e as soluções buscadas para isso. Então, a questão no último PDMAT, a gente tem algumas proposições de gestão, né, de revisão, de reordenamento institucional, dos distritos de drenagem, subdistritos de drenagem. Como é que você vê esse horizonte de reordenamento institucional e futuramente como que isso rebate num retrabalho dos cadernos de bacias do Plano Municipal de Drenagem de São Paulo, nesse sentido?
Tá. Bom, respondendo, ela perguntou das comunidades, né? No caso, o contato que eu falei que a gente tem, tanto com a comunidade do Jardim Pantanal, quanto na comunidade do Torresmo, nós tivemos já começado esse trabalho no Jardim Pantanal, uma ONG que chama Alana, e na comunidade do Torresmo a gente já tinha um trabalho prévio da SEAB e da subprefeitura com essa comunidade do Torresmo. Então, foram trabalhos que ajudaram e colaboraram com a implementação das melhorias que são necessárias nessas duas áreas, né? Aí, respondendo para ele da questão da modelagem, principalmente dos dados, né? Cada caderno ele é feito quando é iniciado o caderno. Bom, a gente procura escolher bacias que já estão com telemetria, com dados telemétricos consolidados. Mas, quando não tem, a gente inicia esse tratamento, essa modelagem, né? Essa modelagem não, como é que chama? Essa pesquisa de dados, esse monitoramento. Porque o modelo ele é calibrado, ele não é um modelo teórico, como a gente trabalha, sempre trabalhei com isso, os modelos eram eminentemente teóricos para esse tamanho de bacia, porque não tinha dados. E o caderno ele inova até nesse ponto, porque todos esses modelos são realmente calibrados. É feita uma inspeção nas áreas inundáveis, então são tomadas cotas de inundação. Quando a gente, quer dizer, tem a parte da telemetria e tem a observação in loco dessas cotas, ou a obtenção disso. Então, eu até recomendo que veja, né, o trabalho inteiro, que ele descreve todos esses passos do planejamento que são adotados. Né? Você me perguntou?
Sobre essa transição do PDMAT.
Ah, sim, sim. Então, eles se conversam bastante. A gente tem um PDMAT específico do Aricanduva, que eu mostrei até o Unifilar, e a gente fez um caderno, porque eu acho que a revisão é uma constante desses trabalhos. A gente está mudando sempre a equação de chuvas e está atualizando, e os eventos estão ficando mais severos. Então, o que era as medidas para um período de retorno de 100 anos no PDMAT, nos primeiros PDMATs, agora já são para 25. A gente tem que propor outras coisas para os 100 anos. Então, isso eu não... A gente ainda... O DAE está em transformação, agora virou SPO, Águas. E a gente ainda não recebeu essa... Na verdade, esse tipo de ação ele tem que ser de iniciativa do governo do Estado. E a Prefeitura ainda não entrou nesse processo.
Is it okay if I answer in English? Just to... Mariam, thank you so much for your insights and your questions. Regarding the documentation of all these challenges that I face and still facing, yes, we are. I am trying, after all this setting up of the model, trying to gather as much data as I could and trying to set up the database. Now I'm in the stage of really documenting the challenges, because I think, and also while I was doing some research among other studies that were conducted worldwide in informal settlements, this is a problem in all the papers that I read. All the papers has at least 1 or 2 paragraphs saying, okay, so, but unfortunately, we have problems with data in this part, unfortunately. So I think it's important to relate and to see, maybe to try to get into a place to try to solve this problem. And one interesting thing, a few weeks ago, I found out my co-advisor of my thesis, he sent me a document about a trace document. I actually didn't know about this. I will not remember what trace means, but it's like a methodology to document all the process of modeling. Because they say that when we're modeling, we're doing a lot of simulations. Okay, let's simulate this. Oh, no, it's not good. Let's simulate again. Let's change this data. But in the end, you do a lot of tryouts, a lot of simulations, and you don't remember what you did, why it did work, why it did not work. So it's important to trace, to document all the process so you know how to, and you understand better the model, I think, in this way. Yeah. Yeah, you understand the result, you understand the process, and you understand what to do, what not to do. So this is something that I want to incorporate, this trace document as well. And regarding the Jonathan's question about the data, the meteorological data, I consider data from a very meteorological station that is 2 kilometers near the catchment, so it's very close. It's called the Itaim Paulista. The data are from the CGE, the Centro de Gerenciamento de Emergências of São Paulo. So I use their data. They collect data every 10 minutes. So it's very, very detailed information every 10 minutes. Regarding field data, yes, when I started doing the research last year, we didn't have as much information as we do now. So it was a huge improvement from last year. From this year, we didn't have the drainage report. So I was struggling with the channel geometries. We had to research everything. But we are intend to, for example, try to come up with cheap and easy solutions, for example, to measure the discharge in the stream alongside with the community. Sometimes to use those floating devices, like some cheap equipments to show the community how to learn about the stream velocity and try to engage them together with some field data. So we are in the progress of working with experimental field data in Lajeado stream. We are still in this. What else? Regarding the LiDAR data, unfortunately, for the modeling, I used a DEM that was not as good as the LiDAR data because it was not available for the whole catchment. But for some specific analysis, I use the LiDAR information that I had for the portion of the catchment that I had to do some, for example, small information, for example, regarding the channel geometry of the stream. I checked with the LiDAR data. But for the input, I used from other sources that had the whole catchment. And
Okay, just some additional comments. So we started this work earlier before Bruna came into our group. We discussed with Ana Paula and Renato about the data. So we described what we need for modeling, and then they dived into, let's say, the authorities to get the data. And the experience here in other parts of the world, data is in general available, but you have to know where, and you have to find the data, and you have to know how to access the data. So this is from my side one of the bases of the requirements for open data acts or open data policies, which end up in open databases. So that you have a centralized, whatever that means, database where you can get the data. And this is a real paradigm shift. So 30 years ago, the German Weather Service was like Fort Knox. You didn't get any data out of it. Now they have a complete open data policy, and they have their FTP server, and you can download whatever they measure, because it's measured by public money, and they have to do it. So this is something which is, in my opinion, very, very important, and an important step. Regarding the different models, so Calypso, Swim, or all the other models, they have basically the same approaches. They are slightly different in the one or the other way. They have their pros and cons. We personally only use, or try to only use, open source models that we can modify, that we know what's going on, that we can at least theoretically modify that. And the Calypso hydrological model we are using because we have the source code. It's open source, and we have developed that so far, and we have applied some, from my point of view, very specific features. So the distributed SATs, the local measures within a subcatchment. We cannot only describe the percentage of area which is evenly distributed over a subcatchment, but we can directly say here, there, and there we have green roofs, and then they are integrated into the system with different run times and so on and so on. So this is from my point of view one advantage of the Calypso model. The other advantage is I showed this storage concept, and this storage concept of hydrological model normally implies that the fate of the water is not important for the model. So you normally cannot model backwater effects. You put from one storage to the other, to the other, to the other, and one of our PhD students implemented a backwater approach on this different levels. So we can calculate backwater effects in green roofs, in cisterns, but also in rivers, and which is, in our case, extremely important because we have tidally influenced rivers. We drain against water levels which may differ by 4 meters. So which is absolutely important in that area. That's why we use that model. That doesn't mean that other models are we do not recognize them. They are good in a certain way. Maybe swim is better to have this urban drainage model integrated. Yeah, that's it basically from my side.
Thank you very much for the questions, and I'd like especially to thank Bruna, Pedro, and Professor Peter for the very nice debate and very rich informations and contributions. So have a good lunchtime, and now we return.
Yeah, at 2 o'clock in the same room. Lunchtime, and then we can back at 2 o'clock to start our panel of water building conscious community with a talk about coastal erosion, flooding and the communities with Venerando and Professor Peter to know about the coastal erosion issues. And then we have in the same panel from 4 o'clock, nature-based solution and communities aware of water resources with Professor Kirsty Carden. Natasha will join us by online.
Yeah, she
oh.
will, I just WhatsApp with her, and she said.
Oh, great, great.
Will,
and
yeah.
Zoraide, Professor Zoraide from Rio Grande do Norte. Okay, see you. Have a good lunch.